The crimson sun of Krajtor hung low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the great arena where 10,000 voices roared in unison. The sound was not quite human, nor was it entirely alien. It was the primal cry of beings who had evolved to worship strength above all else. And today, they had gathered to witness their queen demonstrate why she remained undefeated. Captain Ryan Cross stood in the center of the arena, his wrists bound by energy shackles that hummed with a frequency that made his teeth ache. The gravity here was 1.3 times Earth standard, making every movement feel like swimming through molasses. His tactical suit, once pristine white with the blue insignia of the Terran Defense Force, was now torn and stained with the purple blood of Krajari warriors he had fought during the border station siege 3 days ago. The crowd's roar intensified as the massive gates at the far end of the arena began to open. Steam hissed from hydraulic systems older than human spaceflight, and through the mist stepped Queen Zehra Vorklast. Ryan had seen hollows of her. Of course. Every human in the frontier sectors knew the face of the Krajari warrior queen, who had personally executed 16 champions from various species in single combat, but the hollows hadn't captured the way she moved, like a predator that had never known fear, or the way her 4 arms coordinated in perfect harmony as she walked. She stood nearly 8 feet tall, her exoskeleton gleaming like polished obsidian under the arena lights. Her primary arms carried no weapons. She wouldn't need them for this execution. Her secondary arms, smaller but no less deadly, flexed unconsciously as she approached. The queen's face was angular and sharp, with bioluminescent markings that pulsed along her jaw and temples. Her eyes, all 6 of them, fixed on Ryan with an intensity that made him understand why her enemies often surrendered before the fight even began. 2 primary eyes, large and golden, dominated her face, while 4 smaller ones arranged in pairs on either side of her head gave her nearly 360 degrees of vision. Behold, her voice carried across the arena without amplification, a testament to the acoustic engineering of the ancient structure and the power of Krajari vocal cords. The human who dared to stand against the might of our fleet, who killed 30 of our warriors with his primitive weapons and cunning tricks. The crowd hissed, a sound like 1,000 snakes preparing to strike. Ryan kept his expression neutral, though his mind raced. He had been studying the arena since they dragged him here an hour ago. 20 meters in diameter, walls 30 meters high, smooth as glass except for the viewing platforms. No cover, no weapons, nowhere to run. The sand beneath his feet was imported from the Krajari homeworld, each grain supposedly soaked in the blood of 1,000 conquered enemies. Zehra stopped 5 meters from him, close enough that he could see the intricate scarification patterns on her neck, each mark representing a victory in combat. There were too many to count. "Your name is Ryan Cross," she said, switching from Krajari to accented but fluent English. "You are what your species calls a Special Forces operative. You held Mining Station Theta 9 for 72 hours against my advanced guard." 73 hours, Ryan corrected, his voice steady despite the energy shackles sending periodic shocks through his nervous system. But who's counting? A ripple went through the crowd, even through the translator implants. They could detect the defiance in his tone. No one corrected the queen. No one. Zehra's primary eyes narrowed, but something else flickered in the smaller ones. Amusement, curiosity. It was gone before Ryan could be sure. "You killed Commander Thexval," she continued, beginning to circle him like a shark. "He was my cousin. His death demands blood payment." "He killed civilians," Ryan replied, turning to keep her in sight. "Children. That demands something more than blood payment where I come from." "Children grow into enemies," Zehra said, as if explaining basic arithmetic. "It is the way of war." "It's the way of cowards." The arena fell silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Zehra stopped directly in front of him, her full height towering over his 6-foot frame. Her secondary arms twitched, and Ryan could see the poison sacs beneath her wrists swelling with toxin. One scratch from those natural weapons would paralyze him in seconds, kill him in minutes. "You speak of cowardice." Her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried to every seat in the arena. "You, who use trap mines and ambush tactics instead of facing our warriors with honor." "I speak of necessity," Ryan said. "One human against 30 Krajari, I'd call those tactics evening the odds. Your cousin thought he was hunting prey. He learned too late he was facing a soldier." Zahra leaned down until her face was inches from his, this close. He could smell her pheromones, a mixture of ozone and something floral that shouldn't exist on this desert world. Her breath was surprisingly warm against his face. "You think yourself a soldier?" she asked. "You are an insect. A worm from a planet so insignificant that we discovered it by accident while mining asteroids in your system. Your species has existed for a blink of an eye compared to ours. You have no concept of true strength." She straightened, raising her voice again for the crowd. "This human believes he is a warrior because he can set traps like a scavenger, because he can hide in shadows and strike from darkness. Today, he will learn what it means to face a true warrior's death." The crowd erupted in approval, stamping their feet in a rhythm that made the arena floor vibrate. Ryan felt the energy shackles deactivate and fall away. He rubbed his wrists, never taking his eyes off the queen. "Tradition demands I offer you last words," Zahra said, assuming a combat stance that had been perfected over millennia of Krajari warfare. "Speak them now, before I send you to whatever afterlife your primitive species believes in." Ryan rolled his shoulders, feeling the gravity pull at his muscles. He had been preparing for this moment since his capture, running scenarios, calculating odds. The Krajari expected him to beg, or perhaps make some defiant last stand speech. They had their traditions, their rituals, their expectations. But Ryan Cross had spent 15 years in special operations, and the first thing they taught you was that the enemy's expectations were a weapon you could turn against them. "Last words," he smiled, the expression seeming to confuse the nearest spectators. "I have just one question. Your Majesty, do you know why humans call Earth the cradle of civilization?" Zahra tilted her head slightly, her secondary eyes narrowing. "Your anthropocentric delusions do not interest me." "Because cradles are where you learn to stand," Ryan said, shifting his weight to the balls of his feet. "But eventually, you have to leave the cradle and learn to fight." He moved then, not backward as she expected, not in a futile charge, but sideways in a motion that shouldn't have been possible for a human in this gravity. Ryan had spent 3 days in a cell with nothing to do but adapt to the higher gravity, teaching his muscles to work with it rather than against it. The Queen's primary strike passed through empty air where he had been standing. The crowd gasped. No one had ever dodged the Queen's opening strike. Ryan didn't waste the momentary surprise. He dropped and rolled, kicking up a cloud of the sacred sand directly into Zahra's primary eyes. It was a dirty trick, a street fighter's move, something no Krajari warrior would ever consider in formal combat. "First lesson about humans," Ryan said, already moving again as Zahra's secondary arms lashed out blindly. "We don't fight fair. We fight to win." The Queen snarled, a sound that would have frozen the blood of most species. Her bioluminescent markings flared bright red as she wiped the sand from her eyes. When she could see again, Ryan was 10 meters away, having used her momentary blindness to create distance. "You dare defile the sacred sands!" Her voice was trembling with rage. "You dare bring dishonor to this arena!" "I dare to survive," Ryan replied. "That's what humans do. We survive ice ages, plagues, wars, and extinction events. We survive by adapting, by learning, by doing whatever it takes." Zahra charged, her movement a blur of controlled violence. Ryan waited until the last possible second, then dropped to one knee and pivoted. The Queen's momentum carried her past him, but not before one of her secondary arms caught him across the shoulder. The impact sent him rolling across the sand, and he felt the poison beginning to burn through his suit. He came up running, ripping the damaged section of his suit away before the toxin could reach his bloodstream. The crowd was making a different sound now. Not quite cheering, not quite booing, but something in between. They had never seen their queen challenged like this. "Second lesson," Ryan called out. Circling again as Zahra turned to face him, "Humans are tough to kill. We're the species that looked at wolves and decided to make them our friends. We looked at fire and decided to make it our tool. We looked at the stars and decided to make them our destination." "Pretty words won't save you," Zahra hissed, but there was something different in her tone now. The absolute certainty was cracking. She attacked again, this time with more caution. Her forearms worked in concert, creating a web of strikes that should have been impossible to avoid. Ryan gave ground steadily, each dodge taking him closer to the arena wall. The crowd sensed the end approaching and began to chant their queen's name. But Ryan was counting. Every strike had a pattern. Every combination had a tell. The Krajari had perfected their martial arts over thousands of years, but that perfection had become predictable. They fought with honor, with tradition, with rules. Humans had learned to fight in alleys and trenches, in jungles and cities, against enemies that showed no mercy and followed no rules. They had learned that survival sometimes meant doing the unthinkable. When Zahra committed to what should have been her killing blow, Ryan did something that would be recorded in Krajari history as either the most brilliant or most insane move ever attempted in the arena. Instead of dodging away from the strike, he stepped into it, inside her reach where her longer arms couldn't generate full power. The impact still drove the air from his lungs, and he felt ribs crack. But he was alive and exactly where he needed to be. His elbow found the nerve cluster beneath her primary shoulder, a pressure point that human xenobiologists had theorized about but never tested. Zahra's right primary arm went numb instantly, dropping uselessly to her side. The arena fell completely silent. Ryan staggered back, blood running from his mouth, his left arm hanging at an awkward angle from where he had partially blocked her strike. But he was still standing. And for the first time in her reign. Queen Zahra Vorklas looked uncertain. "Third lesson," Ryan said, spitting blood onto the sacred sand. "Humans are insane by galactic standards. We'll take a hit to land a hit. We'll sacrifice a piece to win the game. We'll burn our own ships just to make a point." Zahra tested her numb arm, her secondary eyes focusing on him with newfound respect. "You studied our anatomy." "I studied everything," Ryan admitted. "Your history, your culture, your biology. That's what humans do. We learn. We adapt, we overcome. It's why we went from throwing stones to splitting atoms in just a few thousand years." The queen began to circle again, more cautious now, favoring her left side. "You cannot win. Even with one arm disabled, I am still stronger, faster, more experienced." "You're right," Ryan said, matching her movement despite the fire in his ribs. "In a fair fight, I'd be dead already. Good thing this isn't a fair fight." He reached down and grabbed a handful of sand, holding it loosely in his fist. Zahra's eyes tracked the movement, her body tensing for another sand attack, but Ryan didn't throw it at her. Instead, he threw it straight up into the air, creating a cloud that caught the setting sun's light, turning the air into a glittering curtain of red and gold. It was beautiful, mesmerizing, and completely unexpected. For just a moment, even the bloodthirsty crowd looked up in wonder. Ryan used that moment to do something else unexpected. He sat down. Right there in the middle of the arena, he crossed his legs and placed his hands on his knees in a meditation pose that would have been recognized on Earth, but was completely alien to the Krajari. "What are you doing?" Zahra demanded, stopping her advance. "Choosing," Ryan replied calmly. "That's the human superpower, Your Majesty, not our strength or speed or technology. Choice. The ability to choose something other than what instinct or tradition demands." "Get up and fight!" The queen's voice carried a note of frustration that had never been heard in this arena before. "No." The word hung in the air like a challenge to the entire Krajari way of life. "If you do not fight, you will die without honor. According to whose definition of honor? Ryan asked, his voice carrying clearly in the stunned silence. Yours, your culture's honor that demands children die because they might grow into enemies. Honor that celebrates the strong, crushing the weak. That's not honor. That's just brutality with better PR. Zahra took a step forward, then stopped. To kill an unarmed, seated opponent would be valid under arena rules, but something in the crowd's silence warned her. They were watching. Truly watching. Perhaps for the first time seeing their traditions through alien eyes. Then, what is honor to your species? She asked, and there was genuine curiosity beneath the anger. Honor is the choice to be better than your base instincts, Ryan said. It's a soldier protecting civilians even though they're from an enemy nation. It's a doctor treating wounded prisoners even though they killed his friends. It's showing mercy when you have the power to destroy. He stood slowly, deliberately, his movements careful due to his injuries. You want to know the real reason I held that mining station for 73 hours? It wasn't to kill Krajari warriors. It was to give the civilian transport ships time to escape. 300 families. Your Majesty, human, Altarian, even a few Krajari traders who had been caught in the wrong place. I held that station so they could live. The Queen's bioluminescent markings flickered through a spectrum of colors, a display of emotional turmoil that her people had never seen from her before. You protected Krajari civilians? Her voice was barely above a whisper. I protected civilians, Ryan corrected. The species didn't matter. That's what soldiers do. Real soldiers, not just warriors who follow orders. The crowd was murmuring now, the sound building like a wave. This was not how executions went in the great arena. The condemned was supposed to die with defiance or fear, not sit down and deliver philosophy lessons. Zahra's working primary arm clenched and unclenched. Her secondary arms twitched with barely controlled aggression. Every instinct, every year of training, every tradition of her people demanded she kill this infuriating human who had turned her execution into a debate. But something else was happening too, for the first time in her life. Queen Zahra Vorklast was thinking about why she fought, not just how. You would have me believe humans are superior because they choose mercy, she asked, taking another step closer. No, Ryan said, meeting her eyes without flinching. I'd have you believe that any species can choose to be better than what they were. That's not human superiority. That's just hope. She stood over him now, close enough that he could see his reflection in her golden eyes. Close enough that one strike from any of her 3 working arms would end this strange confrontation. You killed 30 of my warriors, she said. After they killed 60 civilian miners, Ryan replied. I tried to negotiate first. Your commander, Thexaval, laughed and said humans were too weak to make demands. And you proved him wrong. I proved that humans might be physically weaker, but we're not weak where it counts. Ryan tapped his temple with his good hand. Up here and here. He placed his hand over his heart. We're the species that decided to go to our moon, not because it was easy, but because it was hard. We're the species that records our failures as carefully as our successes, because we believe in learning from both. We're the species that can look at an enemy and see a potential friend. Zahra was silent for a long moment, her multiple eyes studying him with an intensity that seemed to peer into his soul. Then she did something that sent shockwaves through the arena and would ripple across the entire Krajari Empire. She laughed. It wasn't a cruel laugh or a mocking one. It was genuine surprise and something that might have been delight. The sound was so unexpected that several spectators literally fell from their seats. You are either the bravest or most foolish being I have ever faced, she said. Perhaps both. Definitely both, Ryan agreed. It's another human trait. We're all a little bit crazy. The Queen turned to address her people, her voice carrying to every corner of the arena. This human has shown me something I did not expect to see today. He has shown me that strength comes in forms we do not always recognize, that courage can wear the mask of weakness, that honor, That honor might be more complex than our traditions teach. She turned back to Ryan, and for a moment, just a moment, her expression softened into something almost like respect. Then she spit in his face. The glob of saliva hit him directly between the eyes, the traditional Krajari gesture of ultimate contempt. The crowd roared its approval, the sound shaking the very foundations of the ancient arena. This was what they had come to see, the humiliation of an enemy, the demonstration of their queen's superiority. Ryan stood perfectly still as the spittle ran down his face. He could feel the mild acidic burn of Krajari saliva, designed to begin breaking down food before consumption. His eyes never left Zahra's, and incredibly, impossibly. He smiled. "Careful, Your Majesty," he said, his voice calm despite the degradation. "Worms can burrow through stone." The crowd's roar cut off as if someone had thrown a switch. The phrase meant nothing to them but the way he said it. The absolute confidence in his voice, despite standing there with the queen's spit running down his face, sent chills through even the hardened warriors in attendance. Zahra's eyes widened slightly. She had expected rage, humiliation, perhaps desperate violence. She had not expected this human to stand there like he had won something. "What does that mean?" she demanded. "It means," Ryan said, wiping his face with his good hand, "that sometimes the smallest, weakest creatures can bring down the mightiest structures, not through strength, but through persistence, through patience, through finding the tiny cracks and exploiting them." He looked around the arena, addressing the crowd as much as the queen. "You've built your entire civilization on the principle that might makes right. But what happens when you meet something that doesn't fight your way? What happens when the worms start burrowing?" The metaphor was lost on many, but not on Zahra. She understood the implications. Humanity might be physically weaker, technologically behind, numerically inferior, but they were also unpredictable, adaptable, and apparently willing to take humiliation and transform it into something else entirely. "You think your species can defeat the Krajari Empire?" she asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. "I think my species can become friends with the Krajari Empire," Ryan replied. "But first, we have to survive long enough to prove we're worth knowing." The queen raised her working primary arm, the claws extending to their full length. The crowd held its breath. This was the moment, the kill they had come to witness. "You are the strangest enemy I have ever faced. Ryan Cross," she said. "Good," he replied. "Normal is predictable. Predictable is dead." Her arm swept down in a killing arc that would separate his head from his shoulders and stopped a hair's breadth from his neck. The crowd gasped. The queen never hesitated. Never. "You're not afraid," she observed, her claws still resting against his throat. "Oh, I'm terrified," Ryan admitted. "But fear is just another feeling. Humans learned long ago that you can be afraid and still act. We call it courage." "And if I kill you now?" "Then you kill one human who tried to show you something different, but the idea will remain. The possibility that there's another way. That's the thing about ideas. Your Majesty, they're harder to kill than people." Zahra stood frozen for what felt like eternity, her claws at his throat, her eyes locked with his. The entire arena seemed to hold its breath, waiting for their queen's decision. Finally, she withdrew her arm and stepped back. "The execution is postponed," she announced, her voice carrying absolute authority. "This human will remain in the palace for further study." The crowd erupted in confused murmurs. Executions were never postponed. The queen never showed mercy. "Your Majesty," one of her generals called from the royal platform, "tradition demands." "Tradition demands I do what is best for the Krajari," Zahra cut him off. "This human held a mining station for 3 days against our forces. He disabled my arm with a single strike. He has knowledge we need." She looked back at Ryan, and there was something dangerous in her smile. "Besides, death would be too easy. I want to understand what makes him think his species can survive what's coming." "What's coming?" Ryan asked, though he suspected he already knew. "War," Zahra said simply. "The Karveth Dominion masses on our border. They care nothing for your philosophy or our traditions. They destroy everything in their path. If you truly believe in choosing cooperation over conflict, human, you will have the chance to prove it." She turned and began walking toward the arena exit, her disabled arm already beginning to regain feeling. "Bring him," she commanded her guards. "Cleaned and treated. I won't have him dying of infection before I understand what makes these humans so irritatingly persistent." As the guards moved to escort him, Ryan called out, "Your Majesty!" She paused but didn't turn. "What?" "The spit. In human culture. We have a saying about that, too." "Oh." Her tone was dangerous. "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And Your Majesty." He grinned, despite the pain from his ribs. "I'm still standing." She turned then, and for just a moment, Ryan could have sworn he saw approval in those golden eyes. "We shall see how long that lasts. Captain Cross, we shall see." As the guards led him away, Ryan could hear the crowd's continued confusion and debate. He had survived the arena, but more than that, he had planted seeds of doubt in their certainty, cracks in their tradition-bound thinking. Like a worm burrowing through stone. The red sun finally set as they entered the palace, and Ryan allowed himself a small moment of satisfaction. Phase 1 was complete. He was alive, inside the enemy's stronghold, and had the Queen's attention. Now the real work would begin. The palace corridors were a stark contrast to the arena's brutal simplicity. Here, bioluminescent panels created patterns that shifted like living art, responding to the emotional states of those who passed. Ryan noticed his escort's panels flickered nervous yellow whenever they looked at him. He had become something unprecedented in their experience, a prisoner who was also a curiosity, an enemy who might be an asset. They brought him to what he assumed was a medical facility, though it looked more like a fusion of organic architecture and advanced technology. The walls seemed to breathe, pulsing gently with a rhythm that matched his heartbeat once he was placed on the examination platform. The Krajari medical officer, distinguishable by the green geometric patterns on her exoskeleton, approached with obvious reluctance. She was smaller than the warriors, maybe 6.5 feet tall, with more delicate features that suggested a different caste within their society. "You are damaged," she said in accented English, her forearms already beginning to manipulate various scanning devices. "Multiple fractures in ribs 3 through 6, partial separation of the left shoulder joint, extensive soft tissue damage, and..." She paused, her secondary eyes widening. "How are you conscious your pain levels should have induced shock?" "Humans have an interesting relationship with pain," Ryan replied through gritted teeth. "We can ignore it when we need to. Adrenaline is a hell of a drug." She tilted her head, a gesture he was beginning to recognize as Krajari curiosity. "Your biochemistry is fascinating. Your body is producing numerous compounds I don't recognize. This adrenaline appears to be overriding your nervous system's damage signals. Evolution's gift to a species that had to run from predators before we learned to become predators ourselves," Ryan explained. "We call it fight-or-flight response. You chose fight against the Queen. That was illogical." "Was it? I'm alive, aren't I?" The medical officer's markings shifted to a deep purple he hadn't seen before. "You understand you've created a significant problem. The Queen has never spared an arena opponent. There's no precedent for what happens next." "Good. Precedents are just excuses to avoid thinking about better solutions." She began applying some sort of biological paste to his injuries. It felt cold at first, then warm, then nothing. The pain simply vanished. "That's incredible," Orion said, testing his shoulder. "What is that?" "Nanobiological repair medium. It will accelerate your healing by a factor of 10. You should be functional within 3 days." She paused in her work. "Why did you protect Krajari civilians at the mining station?" The question seemed to come from genuine curiosity rather than interrogation. Ryan considered his answer carefully. "Because they were civilians, non-combatants. Where I come from, soldiers exist to protect those who can't protect themselves. It doesn't matter what species they are." "That's inefficient," Resources spent protecting enemy civilians could be used for military advantage. Is it inefficient? Ryan countered. Those Krajari traitors I saved will go home and tell their families that a human soldier protected them. Their children will grow up knowing that humans can be trusted to do the right thing even in war. How many future allies did I create with that one act? The medical officer's colors shifted again, cycling through patterns he couldn't interpret. You think in longer terms than most warriors. Humans have to. We don't live as long as most galactic species, so we've learned to think beyond our own lifespans. We plant trees whose shade we'll never sit in. Before she could respond, the doors to the medical bay hissed open. Queen Zahra entered, her arm apparently fully recovered. She had changed from her arena attire to something that looked more functional, a form-fitting suit that appeared to be made of living tissue that responded to her movements. "Leave us," she commanded the medical officer, who quickly gathered her equipment and departed. Zahra circled the examination platform, her multiple eyes taking in his partially healed injuries. "My medical staff tells me you should be dead. The amount of pain you endured in the arena would have sent most species into neural shutdown." "Humans are stubborn," Ryan said simply. "So I'm learning." She stopped in front of him. "Tell me about the Kar-Veth Dominion." "I know what any frontier soldier knows. They're expansionist, highly aggressive, and they don't take prisoners. They've consumed 6 systems in the last decade." 7, Zahra corrected. "The Altarian home system fell last month. We've kept it quiet to prevent panic." Ryan felt a chill. He had friends in the Altarian fleet. Survivors. "None. They don't just conquer. Captain Cross, they consume, literally. They strip planets of all biological material to fuel their expansion. They're less a civilization and more a plague with technology. And they're coming here. Our border stations have detected scout ships. We estimate the main fleet will arrive within 60 days. She paused, studying him. "Your people have a saying, 'The enemy of my enemy is my friend.' Do you believe that?" "I believe it's more complicated than that, but it's a starting point." Zahra moved to a wall panel. Manipulating it to display a holographic star map, Ryan recognized the local cluster, with Krajari space in red, human territories in blue, and a spreading purple stain that had to be the Kar-Veth. "Your people are here." She indicated the small blue section. 17 colonies, 3 major systems, 1 fleet of 60 ships. 62, Ryan corrected. 2 new frigates were commissioned last month. She adjusted the display. 62 ships. We have 400. The Kar-Veth have over 1,000, and they grow with each system they consume. Numbers aren't everything. No, then what is, Captain, your human spirit, your adaptability, your choice? The last word carried a slight mocking tone. "Our creativity," Ryan said, standing from the examination platform. His legs held, though he could feel the nano-treatment still working. "You have 400 ships that all fight the same way, following the same tactics your people have used for millennia. The Kar-Veth have 1,000 ships that rely on overwhelming force. Humans have 62 ships and 62 different ways of thinking about combat." "Examples," Zahra demanded. Ryan moved to the display, his fingers hesitating over the alien interface. "May I?" She gestured permission, and he began manipulating the display, surprised at how intuitive it was. The Battle of Titan Station, 8 years ago. Pirates had a fleet of 12 ships against our 3 patrol vessels. By any conventional measure, we should have lost. But you didn't. Our commander, Admiral Sarah Martinez, she had grown up studying naval warfare from Earth's pre-space era. She adapted a tactic from something called the Battle of Trafalgar. Instead of engaging in a traditional space battle, she used Titan's atmosphere and gravity well to force the pirates into a line formation, then crossed their T and took them apart one by one. He created a simple animation on the display showing the maneuver. 12 ships destroyed, 3 captured, 0 human losses. Not because we were stronger, but because we thought differently. Zahra studied the display intently. "This Admiral Martinez, she still serves." She's the commander of our frontier fleet, the one you'd have to go through to conquer human space. The one I was planning to go through, Zahra corrected, before the Karveth became the greater threat. She closed the display and faced him directly. I'm going to make you an offer, Captain Cross, one that goes against every tradition of my people, but might be the only thing that saves us all. I'm listening. Train my warriors, teach them to think like humans, show them these unconventional tactics. In exchange, I'll guarantee safe passage for human refugees if the Karveth break through our lines. Ryan was quiet for a moment, processing. That's not enough. Her eyes flashed dangerously. You're hardly in a position to negotiate. Actually, I am. You need me more than I need you. The Karveth will hit you first. Humans might have time to evacuate, to run, to find somewhere else. You're standing and fighting because this is your home. That gives me leverage. What do you want? Her voice was low, dangerous. Alliance. Real alliance. Not just me training your warriors, but joint operations. Human creativity combined with Krajari strength. Our ships fighting alongside yours. And when we win, because we will win, recognition of human sovereignty and a permanent peace treaty. You assume much. I assume you're smart enough to know you can't win alone. Your 400 ships fighting with traditional Krajari tactics will last maybe a week against the Karveth. Our 62 ships alone might last 3 days, but together we might actually have a chance. Zahra was silent for a long moment. Her bioluminescent markings cycling through colors Ryan was beginning to associate with deep thought. You would trust us after we attacked your station, killed your people. I would trust mutual survival instinct, and I'd trust you, Your Majesty. Me, she seemed genuinely surprised. I spit in your face 3 hours ago. Yes, you did, but you also stopped your killing blow when you could have completed it. You brought me here instead of leaving me to die. You're already thinking beyond tradition, whether you admit it or not. She moved closer, close enough that he could feel the heat radiating from her exoskeleton. You're either very brave or very stupid, Captain Cross. Definitely both, he repeated his earlier assessment. But I'm also right, and you know it. Another long silence. Then, I'll need proof. Proof that your methods work against the Karveth specifically, not just pirates or border skirmishes. Give me a ship, a mixed crew of humans and Krajari, and the location of a Karveth scout group. I'll give you proof. A mixed crew, impossible. Krajari warriors would never serve under a human commander. Then we make it a joint command, you and me. Your strength, my tactics. Show your people that cooperation is possible. She laughed. That same surprised sound from the arena? You want me, the queen of the Krajari Empire, to share command with a human prisoner. I want you to do what you've already decided is necessary but are afraid to admit. You didn't spare me in the arena just for study. You spared me because some part of you recognized that your old ways aren't enough anymore. The galaxy is changing. Your Majesty, the question is whether we change with it or get consumed by it. Her primary eyes narrowed, but her secondary ones remained focused on him with an intensity that was almost physical. You presume much about my thoughts. I observe and adapt. It's what humans do. She turned away. Pacing to the far side of the medical bay, Ryan could see the tension in her posture, the way her secondary arms clenched and unclenched. She was fighting millennia of ingrained tradition, considering something that would have been unthinkable even days ago. Finally, she turned back. 3 days. You have 3 days to design a training program that can teach Krajari warriors to think like humans without losing their effectiveness. If you succeed, I'll consider your proposal for joint operations. And if I fail, then you go back to the arena, and this time, I won't hesitate. Ryan nodded. Fair enough, but I'll need access to your military databases, tactical histories, and at least a small group of warriors to test theories with. You'll have what you need, but Captain Cross, her voice carried a warning. If you betray this trust, if this is some elaborate escape plan or sabotage, I will personally ensure that your death makes the arena look like mercy. Understood, but your majesty. When we succeed, and we will succeed, I want one more thing. You continue to push boundaries. I want you to publicly acknowledge that humans saved the Krajari Empire, not as servants or subjects, but as equals, as allies who stood with you when it mattered. She stared at him for a long moment, then smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression on a face designed for warfare, but there was genuine amusement in it. You truly believe you can do this, turn my warriors into something they've never been. I believe I can show them they already are something more. They just need permission to act on it. Permission, she mused. An interesting choice of words. Very well, Captain Cross. You have 3 days to prove that human madness can be taught. Don't waste them. She moved toward the door, then paused. One question, in the arena, when I spit on you, you smiled. Why? Ryan considered his answer carefully. Because it meant I had gotten under your skin, made you emotional. In combat, emotion is a weakness. But in negotiation, emotion means investment. You wouldn't have been that angry if part of you wasn't already listening. You manipulated me. I survived you. There's a difference. She laughed again, and this time it sounded almost like respect. 3 days, Captain. Impress me. As the door closed behind her, Ryan allowed himself to slump slightly. Everything hurt despite the nano treatment, and he had just committed to an impossible task. But he had also planted seeds that might grow into something unprecedented in galactic history. He thought about the crowd in the arena, the confusion in their voices when their queen had spared him. Change always started with confusion, with questions that didn't have easy answers. He had 3 days to turn that confusion into possibility. Moving to the medical bay's communication panel, he began composing a message to Admiral Martinez. It would likely be intercepted, analyzed, and possibly never sent. But he had to try. The message was simple. Attempting diplomatic solution with Krajari. Carveth threat confirmed and imminent. Recommend defensive posture and await further communication. If successful, expect formal alliance proposal within 7 days. If no word within 10 days, execute contingency Omega. Captain Ryan Cross, authentication code 77 Alpha 9. He sent it, knowing that even the attempt would be reported to Zehra, but that was part of the plan too. Show trust to build trust. 3 days to reshape a warrior culture. 3 days to prevent a war while preparing for a worse one. 3 days to prove that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its weapons or its will to survive, but its ability to turn enemies into allies. Ryan began planning, his mind already racing through training scenarios, cultural integration exercises, and tactical innovations that might save not just humanity, but the Krajari as well. The worm had begun to burrow. The training hall of the Krajari Royal Complex was a monument to thousands of years of martial tradition. Weapons from conquered worlds lined the walls, each one a testament to an enemy defeated, a culture absorbed or destroyed. Ryan stood in the center of the vast space, watching as 20 of Queen Zehra's elite warriors filed in, their expressions ranging from curious to openly hostile. General Tharvok, the Queen's primary military advisor, stood at attention beside Ryan. He was even larger than Zehra, nearly 9 feet of scarred exoskeleton and barely contained violence. His 6 eyes never left Ryan, as if expecting the human to suddenly attack or flee. "These are the best warriors in the Empire," Tharvok rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. "Each has over 100 confirmed kills in single combat. They have agreed to this experiment, only because the Queen commands it." Ryan nodded, studying each warrior in turn. They moved with the fluid grace of apex predators, their 4 arms perfectly coordinated, their bioluminescent markings pulsing with colors he was learning to interpret. Pride, skepticism, anger, curiosity, a rainbow of emotions played across their features. "Thank you for coming," Ryan began, his voice carrying clearly across the hall. "I know this goes against everything you've been taught, a human. Your enemy 3 days ago. Now standing here claiming he can teach you something about warfare. You can teach us nothing. One of the warriors spoke up. His markings identified him as Sub-Commander Krextar. We have perfected combat over millennia. Your species has barely learned to leave your planet. You're absolutely right, Ryan agreed, surprising them. In terms of raw combat skill, any one of you could defeat me. You're stronger, faster, and have more experience. So let me ask you a question. If you're so superior, why am I still alive? The question hung in the air like a challenge. The Queen showed mercy, another warrior suggested, though his tone indicated he didn't fully believe it himself. The Queen doesn't show mercy, Ryan countered. She's too smart for that. She kept me alive because she recognized something that you're all too proud to see. Your perfection has become your weakness. Tharvok's secondary arms twitched, a sign of agitation. Explain. Ryan walked to the weapons wall, running his hand along various implements of death. Every one of these represents a victory against a traditional opponent, someone who fought the way you expected them to fight. But what happens when you face an enemy that doesn't follow your rules? He picked up a ceremonial blade, testing its weight. Sub-Commander Krextar, would you honor me with a demonstration? Krextar looked to Tharvok, who nodded permission. The sub-commander stepped forward, drawing his own blade with his primary right arm. Standard combat rules, Krextar asked. Actually, I was thinking we could try something different. Ryan said, human rules, which means... He pulled out a small device from his pocket. There aren't any... Before anyone could react, Ryan activated the device. It was a simple flashbang grenade he'd cobbled together from medical supplies. Nothing lethal, but bright enough to overload Krajari visual sensors momentarily. In the split second of confusion, Ryan rolled forward, not toward Krextar, but past him, coming up behind the warrior and placing the ceremonial blade against the back of his knee joint, the one spot on a Krajari warrior that was virtually impossible to armor. Dead, Ryan announced calmly, stepping back before Krextar could retaliate. The room erupted in outrage. Several warriors stepped forward, weapons drawn, but Tharvok raised a hand, stopping them. That was dishonorable, Krextar snarled, his markings flashing violent red. That was effective, Ryan corrected. And that's the difference between human warfare and yours. You fight with honor. The Karveth fight to feed. They won't announce themselves. They won't follow rules, and they won't care about your traditions. He addressed the entire group. I'm not here to teach you to fight without honor. I'm here to teach you to survive against an enemy that has none. The Karveth are animals, another warrior spat. We've defeated animals before. Have you? Ryan challenged. When was the last time the Krajari Empire faced an enemy that outnumbered you 3-1? When was the last time you fought something that adapts to your tactics in real time, that learns from every encounter and never makes the same mistake twice? Silence. Ryan pulled up a holographic display using the room's projection system. This is footage from the Altarian defense. Observe. The recording showed Karveth ships swarming over an Altarian battle cruiser, but instead of traditional attack patterns, they moved like a single organism, each ship anticipating the other's movements, creating attack vectors that should have been impossible to coordinate. They're not just animals, Ryan continued. They're a hive mind. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon is connected. When you defeat one, all the others learn from it instantly. Your traditional tactics, perfected over millennia, become useless after the first encounter. The warriors watched in uncomfortable silence as the Altarian ship was literally torn apart and consumed. So what do you propose? Tharvok asked, his tone less hostile now. Unpredictability, Ryan said. Adaptability. Creativity. The three things the Karveth can't instantly counter because they require individual thought, not collective processing. He gestured to the group. I want to try an exercise. Divide into 2 teams of 10. Team 1 will use traditional Krajari tactics. Team 2 will follow my instructions, no matter how strange they seem. The warriors looked at Tharvok, who considered for a moment before nodding. They divided. with Krextar leading Team 1 and a younger warrior named Erondek leading Team 2. Team 2, Ryan addressed his group. Forget everything you know about formation fighting. I want you to think like individuals working toward a common goal, not a unit moving as one. That's chaos, Erondek protested. That's jazz, Ryan said, earning confused looks. Sorry, human reference. It's controlled chaos. Everyone improvising but still playing the same song. Let me show you. He spent the next 30 minutes teaching them something he called swarm tactics. Based on a combination of wolfpack hunting and guerrilla warfare, instead of moving in formation, they would attack from multiple angles simultaneously, each warrior making independent decisions, but all working toward the same objective. This is madness, one warrior complained. We'll hit each other, cause confusion in our own ranks. You would if you were humans, Ryan agreed, but you're not. You have 6 eyes giving you near-perfect spatial awareness. You have 4 arms allowing you to signal and fight simultaneously. You have bioluminescent markings that can communicate emotional states instantly. You're literally built for this kind of combat. You've just never thought to try it. When the mock battle began, it was a disaster. Team 2 stumbled over each other, their attacks uncoordinated, their defense non-existent. Team 1's traditional phalanx formation cut through them like a blade through cloth. Again, Ryan called out. The second attempt was marginally better. Team 2 managed to flank Team 1 briefly before being overwhelmed. Again. By the 5th iteration, something began to click. Team 2 stopped trying to maintain any formation at all. Instead, they moved like water, flowing around Team 1's rigid structure, striking at weak points and retreating before retaliation could come. By the 10th round, Team 2 won. The training hall fell silent. In the thousands of years of Krajari military history, an unformed mob had never defeated a proper phalanx. How, Tharvok demanded. Because they stopped being predictable, Ryan explained. Team 1 kept using the same defensive formation because it had always worked. Team 2 kept changing, adapting, learning. By round 10, they knew exactly how Team 1 would respond to every feint, every attack, every movement. He turned to address all the warriors. This is what I'm offering to teach you, not to abandon your strength, but to add unpredictability to it, to become warriors who can think as well as fight. The Queen will never approve of this chaos, Krextar said, though his tone had lost much of its earlier hostility. The Queen already has, a voice said from the entrance. Everyone turned to see Zehra entering, having apparently watched the entire session. She moved with deliberate grace to the center of the room. I've seen enough, she announced. Captain Cross has demonstrated that our traditional methods, while powerful, are insufficient against an adaptive enemy. She looked directly at Ryan. You have your 3 days. Make them count. As she turned to leave, she paused. General Tharvok, assign Captain Cross a permanent detail from these warriors. He'll need protection if he's to train our forces. Protection from what? Ryan asked. Zehra's expression was unreadable. From those who would rather see the Empire fall than change. Not everyone agrees with my decision to spare you. Captain, some see it as weakness. And what do you see it as? Ryan asked. She considered the question, evolution. She finally answered, then left. The following 2 days were a blur of activity. Ryan worked 18-hour shifts, training not just the initial 20 warriors, but hundreds more who came to observe and, eventually, participate. He taught them concepts that seemed alien at first: guerrilla warfare, psychological operations, asymmetric combat. In human history, he explained during one session, smaller forces have repeatedly defeated larger ones through unconventional tactics: the American Revolution, the Vietnam War, the Martian Rebellion. Each time, the weaker force won by refusing to fight on the enemy's terms. He introduced them to human military philosophy, from Sun Tzu to Clausewitz to the modern theorists of space warfare. He showed them how to use their environment as a weapon, how to turn apparent weakness into strength, how to make the enemy defeat themselves. But it wasn't just about tactics. Ryan also worked to understand Krajari psychology, to find ways to blend human creativity with their natural strengths. "You have perfect coordination between your forearms," he told one group, "but you always use them symmetrically. What if you didn't? What if your left arms were doing something completely different from your right?" He demonstrated with a modified combat technique where the primary arms engaged in traditional combat while the secondary arms performed entirely different tasks, throwing distraction devices, manipulating the environment, or signaling to teammates. "This is uncomfortable," Aaron Deck admitted, trying to coordinate asymmetric movements. "Good," Ryan said. "Comfort is predictability. Discomfort is growth." On the evening of the second day, as Ryan was reviewing tactical simulations, Tharvok approached him privately. "You're not just teaching us to fight differently," the general observed. "You're teaching us to think differently." "Is that a problem?" Ryan asked. Perhaps not." Tharvok's markings shifted through patterns Ryan couldn't fully interpret. "You spoke of evolution earlier. Do you know what happened to the last species that tried to change Krajari culture?" "I can guess. We destroyed them. Completely. Not because they were a threat militarily, but because they were a threat to who we are." Ryan met his gaze steadily. "And who are you, General?" Tharvok was quiet for a long moment. "I used to know. Now I'm not certain. Your human chaos is infectious." "That's not chaos, General, that's growth. And growth is painful, but the alternative is extinction." Before Tharvok could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the complex. Both men rushed to the tactical center where Zara was already reviewing incoming data. "What is it?" Tharvok demanded. "Karveth scout fleet," Zara announced. 6 ships, entering the outer system. They're earlier than expected." Ryan studied the display. "It's a probe. They're testing your response time and tactics." "Then we respond with overwhelming force," Tharvok said. "Send the 3rd Fleet." "Wait," Ryan interrupted. "That's exactly what they want. You send a traditional response. They learn everything about your capabilities and report back to the main fleet." "Then what do you suggest?" Zara asked. Ryan smiled. "We give them exactly what they don't expect. General, how many of your warriors have been training with the new tactics?" "About 300. "Perfect. Can you crew 2 ships with them?" "Yes, but 2 ships against 6. 2 ships using tactics they've never seen, against 6 ships expecting traditional combat." Ryan moved to the display, highlighting approach vectors. "We hit them here, at the asteroid field. Use the terrain, strike and fade. Make them think they're fighting a dozen ships instead of 2. Zara studied the plan. "It's risky." "Wait, everything's risky now. But this is calculated risk with maximum learning potential. Win or lose, we learn how they adapt. And if we win, we send a message that the Krajari have changed." Zara finished. "Do it." As Tharvok rushed to organize the mission, Zara turned to Ryan. "You're gambling with my warriors' lives." "I'm investing them," Ryan corrected. "There's a difference. A gamble hopes for luck. An investment expects returns. And if there are no returns if they all die, then we learn that lesson too, and adapt accordingly. That's what humans do, Your Majesty. We learn from our failures as much as our successes." She studied him intently. "You've changed things here. Captain, 3 days, and already my warriors think differently, act differently. Some of them even speak differently, using your human idioms and concepts. Is that bad?" "I don't know yet." She moved closer, her voice dropping. "But I do know that change was necessary. The old ways would have seen us consumed by the Karveth. Perhaps your chaos is our salvation." "It's not chaos," Ryan insisted. "It's freedom. The freedom to think, to choose, to adapt. Your warriors have always had the capability. They just needed permission to use it." The tactical display updated with the 2 Krajari ships launching. Ryan watched as they moved toward the engagement zone. Not in the traditional straight-line approach, but in a complex weaving pattern that would make them harder to target and predict. "They're really doing it," Zara murmured. "Flying like humans." No, Ryan corrected. They're flying like evolved Krajari, taking the best of both worlds. The engagement, when it came, was unlike anything in Krajari military history. The two ships didn't form up for a traditional broadside exchange. Instead, they dove into the asteroid field, using the massive rocks as cover and weapons. They attached mining charges to asteroids and sent them tumbling toward the Karveth scouts. They used hit-and-run tactics, striking from unexpected angles and disappearing before retaliation could come. The Karveth scouts, clearly expecting traditional Krajari tactics, struggled to adapt. Their hive mind was powerful but needed time to process entirely new information. By the time they began to counter the unconventional attacks, they had lost 2 ships. Impossible. Tharvok breathed, watching the display. They're winning. They're not just winning, Ryan observed. They're learning. Look, they're already modifying the tactics based on Karveth responses. The battle raged for 3 hours. In the end, one Krajari ship was heavily damaged, but all 6 Karveth scouts were destroyed or disabled. It was the first victory against the Karveth in over a year. The tactical center erupted in celebration, but Ryan noticed Zehra remained thoughtful. "What's wrong?" he asked quietly. "This victory will have consequences," she said. "The traditionalists will see it as luck or a fluke. The progressives will want to abandon all our old ways immediately, and the Karveth will adapt," Ryan finished. "They'll be ready for these tactics next time. So we need new ones. We need to keep evolving." "Yes, but Your Majesty, this is just the beginning. What I've taught your warriors is not a set of tactics, but a way of thinking. They can now create their own innovations, their own solutions." She turned to face him fully. "You've given us a weapon more powerful than any technology. You've given us the ability to surprise ourselves." Before Ryan could respond, a communication came through from the lead ship. Commander Yartek appeared on the display, his markings glowing with excitement. "Your Majesty, Captain Cross, the new tactics were successful beyond measure. But more importantly, we've captured one of their ships mostly intact. We're bringing it back for study." "Excellent work, Commander," Zehra replied. "Return immediately. We have much to learn from their technology." As the communication ended, she turned back to Ryan. "Your 3 days are up. Captain, you've proven your worth. Now we move to the next phase. Joint operations. More than that, full integration. I want human advisors on every ship. Krajari warriors learning alongside human soldiers. We're going to create something new. Captain Cross, a fusion of our strengths that neither species could achieve alone. That's going to face massive resistance from both sides." "Yes, it will," she smiled, an expression that was becoming less threatening and more genuine, "which is why you're going to help me sell it, starting with a joint address to both our peoples." Ryan felt the weight of what she was proposing. "You want me to stand beside you, publicly, as an equal?" "I want you to stand beside me as proof that evolution is possible, that enemies can become allies, that strength comes in many forms." She extended her primary right hand, a gesture of partnership that no Krajari royal had ever offered to another species. Ryan took it without hesitation. "Then we'd better make sure we have something impressive to show them." "Oh, we will," Zehra promised, "because in 5 days we're going to take the fight to the Karveth, not just a defensive action, but a strike at their forward base. Your tactics, my warriors, and a message to the galaxy that the Krajari Empire and humanity stand together." "That's ambitious." "That's necessary. The Karveth respect only strength. We show them that we're stronger together than apart, and maybe, just maybe, we can make them pause long enough to build a real defense." Over the next several days, the integration began in earnest. Human vessels arrived under flags of truce, their crews cautiously interacting with Krajari warriors who had been their enemies just weeks before. There were incidents, of course. Fights broke out over misunderstandings, old grudges surfaced, and more than once Ryan had to physically intervene to prevent bloodshed. But there were also moments of unexpected connection, A human engineer named Kara Solin worked with Krajari technicians to develop hybrid weapon systems that combined human creativity with Krajari power generation. A young Krajari warrior taught human soldiers how to read the subtle color changes in their markings, allowing for communication without words. Slowly, painfully, but inevitably, two species began to see each other as something other than enemies. Ryan found himself at the center of it all, translating not just languages but cultures, finding common ground where none seemed to exist. "You're exhausted," Zahra observed, finding him in the tactical center late one night, still reviewing integration protocols. "I'm fine," he lied. She moved to stand beside him, looking out at the viewport where human and Krajari ships floated side by side. "Do you know what the hardest part of change is, Captain?" "The resistance?" "No. The hardest part is admitting that everything you believed might have been wrong." She paused. "I was raised to believe that strength was everything, that mercy was weakness, that other species existed only to serve or be destroyed. And now I see a human who took my spit in his face and turned it into a strategic advantage, who showed mercy when he had the chance for revenge, who's risking everything to save a species that tried to kill him." She turned to look at him. "You've made me question everything I thought I knew about strength." "That's not weakness, Your Majesty. That's wisdom." "Zahra," she corrected. "When we're alone, call me Zahra." The informality surprised him. "All right, Zahra. Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "In the arena, when you stopped your killing blow, what made you hesitate?" She was quiet for a long moment. Your eyes, there was no fear in them, but there was also no hate. You looked at me like you saw something worth saving. No one has ever looked at me that way before. Everyone is worth saving," Ryan said simply. "That's what humans believe. That's what makes us do impossible things. Like turning your greatest enemy into your ally. Like recognizing that there are no enemies. Only people we haven't understood yet." She laughed softly. "You're dangerously idealistic. And you're learning to be the same." They stood in comfortable silence, watching their combined fleets prepare for what would either be a historic victory or a catastrophic defeat. The strike on the Karveth base was scheduled for dawn, and everything depended on human and Krajari forces working together seamlessly. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" Zahra asked. "No," Ryan admitted, "but that's never stopped humans before. We have a saying, courage isn't the absence of fear, it's action in spite of fear. Then by your definition, we're about to be very courageous." "Together," Ryan emphasized. "That's the key. Not human courage or Krajari strength, but something new, something the galaxy has never seen before." As if in response to his words, a joint training exercise began outside. Human and Krajari fighters moved in complex patterns, their maneuvers a blend of both species' techniques. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of confusion and near collision, but it was working. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Zahra observed. "It's hope," Ryan replied. "Messy, imperfect, dangerous hope." She smiled, the expression now completely natural on her features. "Then let's hope the Karveth appreciate beauty." "They won't," Ryan said, "but they'll learn to fear it, because nothing is more dangerous than two species who've learned to see past their differences." The morning would bring battle, possibly death, certainly change. But standing there, human and Krajari side by side, Ryan felt something he hadn't experienced since the war began: genuine optimism. The worm hadn't just burrowed through stone, it had begun to transform it into something stronger. The Joint Strike Force emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Varkon system, where intelligence had placed a Karveth forward base. 20 ships in total, 12 Krajari vessels and 8 human ones, held formation as they approached the asteroid cluster that concealed their target. Ryan stood on the bridge of the Krajari flagship Eternal Rage, watching as human and Krajari crew members worked side by side. The integration hadn't been smooth just 6 hours ago. A human navigation officer and a Krajari weapons specialist had nearly come to blows over targeting protocols, but they were managing, driven by necessity and the shared understanding that failure meant extinction for both species. "Contact in 3 minutes," announced Commander Yartek, his 4 arms dancing across multiple control panels simultaneously. "The base appears to be built into asteroid designate CAR 94. Significant energy readings suggest they're aware of our approach." Zahra stood at the central command position, her posture radiating confidence despite the tension Ryan could read in the subtle shifts of her bioluminescent markings. "All ships implement attack pattern Chaos 3. It was one of the hybrid strategies they'd developed, combining Krajari firepower with human unpredictability. Instead of a frontal assault or traditional flanking maneuver, the fleet would split into seemingly random groups, each taking different approach vectors that would converge at precisely calculated moments. "Human ships report ready," Kara Solon announced from the communication station. She'd volunteered to serve on the Krajari flagship as a liaison, though Ryan suspected it was partly to keep an eye on him. "Ma'am," a young Krajari sensor operator spoke up, his secondary eyes widening. "I'm reading something unusual. The asteroid base. It's not just built into the rock. The entire asteroid appears to be artificial." Before anyone could respond, space around them erupted. What they'd thought was an asteroid base was actually a massive Kar-Veth vessel, disguised beneath layers of rock and ice. Weapons ports opened across its surface like eyes opening on some cosmic beast, and beams of destructive energy lanced out toward the Allied fleet. "Evasive maneuvers," Zahra commanded. But 2 Krajari ships were caught in the initial barrage, their shields flaring and failing under the concentrated assault. "It's a trap," Ryan said, his mind racing through possibilities. "They knew we were coming." "Impossible." Tharvok growled from his position at the tactical station. "Our operational security was perfect." "Unless they wanted us to find this base," Ryan countered. "Unless they've been studying us as much as we've been studying them." The massive Kar-Veth vessel began to move, shedding its asteroid disguise like a molting insect. It was easily the size of 3 Krajari battleships, its organic-looking hull pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that hurt to look at directly. "All ships, scatter pattern beta," Zahra ordered, but Ryan grabbed her arm. "No, wait. Look at how they're positioning. They want us to scatter. They're hurting us." She looked at the tactical display and saw what he meant. Smaller Kar-Veth ships were emerging from hidden positions among the other asteroids, creating a net that would trap any ships that tried to flee. "Then what do you suggest?" "We go through them," Ryan said. "Straight at the big one. It's not expecting a direct assault because that would be suicide by conventional logic." "It would be suicide," Tharvok protested. "Not if we do it right." Ryan moved to the tactical display, his fingers flying across the interface. "Look, their main weapons are concentrated in these nodes along the hull. But here, where the asteroid camouflage was attached, the hull is still adapting. It's vulnerable for maybe another 30 seconds. Zahra studied the display for a heartbeat, then made her decision. "All ships, form on the Eternal Rage. We're going straight down their throat." The combined fleet wheeled around, abandoning their scattered formation to form a spearhead with the Krajari flagship at its tip. The Kar-Veth vessel's weapons intensified their barrage, and Ryan watched the shield indicators drop precipitously. "Shields at 40%, someone called out. 30%. "Transfer all power from non-essential systems to forward shields," Ryan ordered, hoping his authority would be recognized in the heat of battle, including life support in non-critical sections. "That's insane," a Krajari officer protested. "Do it," Zahra commanded, backing Ryan's call. The shield stabilized at 22%, just as they reached optimal weapons range. "All ships, concentrate fire on grid reference 694, Ryan announced. "Everything you've got." The combined firepower of 20 ships focused on a single point, and for a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the Kar-Veth vessel's hull began to buckle and tear at the impact point. "It's working," Kara announced. "Hull breach detected." But the Karveth weren't passive victims. Smaller craft began pouring from the mothership like antibodies, responding to an infection. They swarmed toward the Allied fleet, their movements perfectly coordinated. "Fighter screen, engage," Zehra commanded. "Don't let them reach the capital ships." Human and Krajari fighters launched together, their pilots having trained for only days to work in concert. Ryan watched the tactical display as the two very different fighting styles tried to mesh. The Krajari fighters flew in perfect formation, their weapons creating overlapping fields of fire. The human fighters darted and wove, each pilot making individual decisions that somehow added up to a coherent defense. It almost worked. A wing of Karveth fighters found a gap in the defense, diving toward the human frigate Madison. Ryan watched in horror as they attached to its hull and began boring through. "Madison is being boarded," Kara reported, her voice tight with control. "Can we assist?" Zehra asked. "Negative," came the response from Madison's captain over comms. "We're implementing Hellfire Protocol. Get clear." Ryan's blood ran cold. Hellfire Protocol was the human fleet's last resort, a complete overload of the ship's reactor, turning it into a massive bomb. "Captain Morrison, there has to be another way," Ryan called out. "Negative. Cross. We're already compromised. Internal defenses are down, but we're taking these bastards with us. It's been an honor." Madison out. 30 seconds later, the Madison detonated. The explosion took out 6 Karveth fighters and damaged dozens more, creating a hole in their swarming attack. "They sacrificed themselves," Tharvok said, his tone carrying something that might have been respect. "They bought us time," Ryan corrected, his jaw clenched. "Let's not waste it." The Allied fleet pushed through the gap created by Madison's sacrifice, their concentrated fire finally penetrating the Karveth mothership's hull. Secondary explosions rippled across its surface as internal systems failed. "It's breaking apart," Yartek announced. "But wait, I'm reading massive energy buildup in its core." "It's going to self-destruct," Ryan realized. "All ships, maximum burn. Get clear." The fleet scattered, engines pushed beyond safe limits as they raced to escape the blast radius. The Karveth mothership's death was spectacular and terrible, an expanding sphere of plasma that vaporized everything within 1,000 kilometers. When the radiation cleared enough for sensors to function, they took stock. 3 Krajari ships destroyed, 2 heavily damaged, 2 human ships lost, including the Madison. But the Karveth base was gone, along with over 40 enemy vessels. "Victory," Tharvok announced, but there was no celebration in his voice. "Expensive victory," Zehra corrected. She turned to Ryan. "Your unconventional tactics saved us from complete annihilation, but we still lost 5 ships. Every battle against the Karveth will have losses," Ryan said quietly. "The question is whether we can make those losses mean something." Before she could respond, alarms began blaring again. "Hyperspace signatures detected," the sensor operator announced. "Multiple contacts. It's the Karveth main fleet. Over 200 ships." The bridge fell silent. They were damaged, exhausted, and now faced with an enemy force 10 times their size. "We can't fight that," someone whispered. "We can't outrun it either," Tharvok added. "Not with damaged ships." Ryan stared at the tactical display, his mind racing through options. Then he saw something that made him smile grimly. "Yes, we can. Zehra, trust me on this. Order all ships to follow my lead exactly." She studied his face for a moment, then nodded. "All ships. Slave navigation to the Eternal Rage. Captain Cross has the con." Ryan's fingers flew across the navigation console, plotting a course that made no sense by conventional logic. Instead of fleeing directly away from the Karveth fleet, he angled toward a nearby gas giant. "That's a gravity well," Yartek protested. "We'll be trapped." "Or hidden," Ryan countered. "The gas giant's magnetosphere will scramble their sensors. But more importantly," he pulled up a stellar chart. "This system's sun is going through increased solar activity. There's a coronal mass ejection building that will hit this area in approximately 15 minutes. Understanding dawned on Zahra's face. You want to use the solar storm as cover. More than that, I want to use it as a weapon. Ryan highlighted several positions around the gas giant. We position our ships here, here, and here. When the CME hits, we use our shields to channel and focus the plasma stream toward the Karveth fleet. That's never been done before, Kara said. Which is why they won't expect it, Ryan replied. The next 15 minutes were the longest of Ryan's life. The Allied fleet took position around the gas giant, their damaged ships hidden in its upper atmosphere, while the combat-capable vessels formed a careful formation. The Karveth fleet approached steadily, their search pattern methodical and thorough. CME impact in 30 seconds when someone announced, "All ships, angle shields according to provided calculations," Ryan commanded. "This is going to be rough." The coronal mass ejection hit like the fist of an angry god. Billions of tons of solar plasma slammed into the gas giant's magnetosphere, creating an aurora that would have been beautiful if it weren't so deadly. The Allied ship's shields screamed under the strain, but they held, channeling the plasma into focused streams that lanced out toward the Karveth fleet. The enemy ships, caught completely off guard, had no defense against the stellar fury directed at them. Their organic hulls, evolved to resist conventional weapons, were not designed to handle the raw power of a focused solar storm. Ship after ship was consumed, their death throes adding to the chaotic energy filling local space. When the storm passed, 40 Karveth ships were gone, and dozens more were damaged. The remainder of their fleet pulled back, apparently reassessing the threat. "They're retreating," Tharvok announced, disbelief in his voice. "Not retreating," Ryan corrected, exhaustion finally showing in his voice. "Adapting. They'll be back. And next time, they'll be ready for this tactic." "Then we'll have to be ready with new ones," Zahra said. She addressed the fleet. "All ships, return to Krajari space for repairs and debriefing. We've won this round, but the war is far from over." As the battered fleet limped toward home, Zahra moved to stand beside Ryan at the viewport. "That was brilliant," she said quietly. "Using the environment itself as a weapon, no Krajari warrior would have thought of it. And no human would have had the ships capable of surviving it." Ryan replied, "We each brought something the other needed. The Council won't see it that way. They'll focus on the losses, question the alliance. Then we'll have to convince them otherwise." She was quiet for a moment. "There's something else. During the battle, when the Madison was lost, I saw your face. Those were your people. They were soldiers. They knew the risks." "That's not what I mean." She turned to face him fully. "You grieved for them. Even in the middle of combat, Krajari warriors don't do that. We honor the dead after battle. But during, there is only survival. Humans carry their dead with them." Ryan said, "Every loss becomes part of who we are, drives us to be better, to ensure their sacrifice meant something." "Is that why you fight for the dead?" "I fight for the living, to ensure there are fewer dead tomorrow than today." She considered this. "You're changing us. Ryan Cross, not just our tactics, but our very understanding of what it means to be warriors. Is that bad? Ask me when we survive this war." The journey back to Krajari space took 3 days. During that time, the initial battle reports were analyzed, reanalyzed, and debated endlessly. The victory was undeniable, but so were the losses. 5 ships and over 300 lives, human and Krajari both. Ryan spent most of the journey working with the combined crews, gathering feedback, identifying problems, and refining tactics. He was particularly interested in the moments when human and Krajari approaches had clashed. "The problem," explained Captain Sarah Martinez, who had arrived with the human reinforcements, "is that we're still thinking like separate forces that happen to be working together. We need to become something new." She had commanded one of the human frigates during the battle and had insights Ryan valued. "What do you suggest?" Ryan asked. "Full integration, mixed crews on every ship, Not just liaisons, but humans and Krajari working side by side in every position. The cultural barriers alone would make that nearly impossible. Tharvok protested. He had joined the discussion, bringing several of his senior officers. Difficult, not impossible. Martinez countered, "Look at Cross and the Queen. A week ago, they were trying to kill each other. Now they're planning joint operations." "That's different," Tharvok said, though his tone suggested he wasn't entirely convinced of his own argument. "Is it?" Ryan asked. "Or is it just the first example of what's possible?" The debate continued, but it was interrupted by their arrival at Krajtor. As they entered orbit, Ryan could see crowds gathering in the cities below. News of the battle had preceded them. "They're celebrating," Zehra observed, standing beside him on the observation deck. "They shouldn't be. We barely survived, and that was just a fraction of their fleet. Let them have this moment. Hope is a rare commodity in war." They were met at the palace by the full war council, 12 of the most powerful Krajari in the empire. Their markings were almost uniformly displaying skepticism and hostility. "You lost 5 ships," Council Elder Maxenvel stated without preamble. His age was evident in the dulled edges of his exoskeleton, but his 6 eyes were sharp as daggers. "We destroyed a Karveth base and over 40 enemy vessels," Zehra countered. Through luck and environmental coincidence, another council member interjected. "These human tactics are chaotic, unpredictable." "That's precisely why they work," Ryan said, stepping forward despite protocol demanding he remain silent unless addressed. The council members' markings flared with indignation at his breach of protocol, but Zehra raised a hand before they could protest. "Captain Cross has earned the right to speak. His tactics saved the fleet." "His tactics killed 300 warriors," Maxenvel corrected. "Warriors who died following alien strategies that go against everything we stand for." "With respect, Elder," Ryan said, trying to keep his tone neutral. "What you stand for is about to get you all killed. The Karveth don't care about your traditions or your honor. They care about consumption. You can die traditionally, or you can adapt and live." "You dare lecture us about survival," another council member. Jexera stood, her forearms spread in a threat display. "Your species has existed for a heartbeat compared to ours. And in that heartbeat, we've gone from cave dwellers to space travelers. We've survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and near-extinction events, not through physical superiority, but through adaptability. That's what I'm offering you." "What you're offering is the destruction of Krajari culture," Maxenvel said. "No," Zehra interjected. "He's offering its evolution." The council chamber fell silent. For the Queen to directly contradict the council was almost unprecedented. "You've been influenced by this alien," Jexera accused. "I've been educated by this ally," Zehra corrected. "And if you would set aside your pride for a moment, you would see what I see. The Karveth are coming. Our traditional methods have failed against them every time. Captain Cross's methods have succeeded twice. Small victories against scout forces, Maxenvel dismissed, which is more than anyone else has achieved," Ryan pointed out. "Look, I understand your reluctance. Asking a warrior culture to change its fundamental approach to combat is like asking someone to forget how to breathe, but the alternative is extinction." He moved to the chamber's holographic display, calling up tactical data from the recent battle. "Look at this. When human and Krajari forces worked together, our effectiveness increased by 300%. When we fought separately, even in coordination, we were barely holding our own. The fusion of our approaches creates something neither species could achieve alone." "You speak of fusion," Maxenvel said slowly, "but what you really mean is contamination. Already, our warriors speak using human terms, adopt human strategies. Where does it end?" "It doesn't," Ryan said simply. "Evolution doesn't end. It continues, always adapting, always improving. The species that stop evolving are the ones that go extinct." Before the council could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the palace. a communication officer rushed into the chamber, his markings cycling through patterns of extreme distress. Your Majesty, Council Elders, we're receiving a transmission. It's from the Karveth. The chamber fell silent. The Karveth had never communicated before, only consumed. Put it through, Zahra commanded. The holographic display shifted, and a figure appeared that made Ryan's skin crawl. It was vaguely humanoid, but wrong in every way. Its flesh seemed to shift and writhe, as if millions of smaller organisms were pretending to be a single being. When it spoke, the voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once. Krajari, humans, we are the Karveth Collective. We have observed your alliance. We have analyzed your tactics. We have adapted. The figure paused, and Ryan could swear it was looking directly at him despite the impossibility of that through a transmission. You fight well for individual species, but you are still bound by the illusion of self. We are many and one. We are evolution perfected. Your alliance is a curiosity, nothing more. What do you want? Zahra demanded. Want is an individual concept. We simply are. We expand. We consume. We evolve. You have proven more interesting than most prey. We offer you a choice. Join the collective willingly, and your consciousnesses will be preserved within us. Resist, and you will be consumed without trace. We choose resistance, Zahra said without hesitation. The figure's approximation of a face shifted into something that might have been amusement, expected, appreciated. Your resistance makes the consumption more nutritious. We will arrive at your core worlds in 30 rotations. Prepare however you wish. It will make no difference. The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. 30 days, someone whispered. We need the full fleet mobilized, Tharvok said, already moving toward the door. We need more than that, Ryan said. We need every advantage we can get. Every human ship, every Krajari vessel, working in perfect coordination. The Council hasn't approved, Maxenvel began. The Council can approve it now or explain to the ashes of our civilizations why they didn't. Zahra cut him off. Her markings were blazing with determination. I'm implementing emergency war powers. Full integration of human and Krajari forces, effective immediately. You don't have the authority. I have the responsibility, she corrected, to every Krajari life, to our allied humans, to the future of both our species. Council, you can support me or oppose me, but either way, this is happening. The council members looked at each other, their markings shifting through various shades of uncertainty and anger. Finally, Maxenvel spoke. If we support this integration and it fails, the death of our empire will be on your head. And if we don't support it, that death is certain. Zahra replied, at least this way, we die fighting as something new rather than clinging to something old. One by one, the council members voted. It was close, 7 in favor, 5 against, but it was enough. Then may the ancestors forgive us, Maxenvel said quietly. As the council dispersed to begin preparations, Ryan found himself alone with Zahra in the chamber. 30 days, she said quietly. Can we really prepare an integrated defense in 30 days? We don't have a choice, Ryan replied. But Zahra, this isn't just about military integration. We need cultural integration too. Our peoples need to understand each other, trust each other if this is going to work. And how do we achieve that? Ryan smiled grimly. By showing them we already have. You and I were proof that humans and Krajari can work together. We need to be visible, unified, unquestionable. You're suggesting a public relations campaign in the middle of preparing for war? I'm suggesting we give both our species something to fight for besides survival. Give them hope that there's a future worth defending. She considered this. You continue to surprise me. Ryan Cross, a week ago, you were my prisoner. Now you're my strategic advisor and apparently my publicity manager. Life's funny that way, Ryan said. But Zahra, there's something else. The Karveth knew about our alliance, our tactics, everything. They've been watching us. Which means we have a spy. Someone's been feeding them information. Her markings darkened. If that's true, then we're compromised before we even begin. Not if we find them first. And I think I know where to start looking. Before he could elaborate, Kara Solon entered the chamber. Captain Cross, Your Majesty, we're receiving priority communications from Earth. Admiral Martinez needs to speak with you immediately. They moved to the communication center, where Martinez's face appeared on the main screen. Her expression was grim. Ryan, Your Majesty, we have a problem. The Earth Senate is divided on the Alliance. Half want to recall all human forces immediately. That's insane, Ryan protested. We're stronger together. I know that. You know that. But they see the losses from the first engagement and think we're being used as cannon fodder. Tell them about the Karveth ultimatum, Zara suggested. I have. They're debating whether to negotiate separately. There is no separate negotiation with the Karveth, Ryan said firmly. There's only consumption or resistance. Then you need to give me something. Ryan, something that proves this alliance is worth the risk. Ryan exchanged glances with Zara, then made a decision. Tell the Senate that Queen Zara is prepared to offer full technological exchange. All Krajari military technology, including shield generators and weapon systems, in exchange for full human commitment to joint defense. Martinez's eyes widened. Is that true? Ryan looked at Zara, who nodded slowly. It's true, she confirmed. We share everything, or we lose everything. I'll relay that immediately. But Ryan, even with that offer, we're going to need a victory. Something that shows the alliance works. We're working on it, Ryan assured her. Just buy us time. As the communication ended, Zara turned to him. Full technological exchange. You realize what you've just promised. I realize it's what should have happened from the beginning. No more secrets. No more holding back. If we're going to survive, we need to become something neither of us is alone. The Council will revolt. Then convince them otherwise. You're good at that. She laughed, a sound that was becoming more common and more genuine. You have too much faith in me. No, Ryan said seriously. I have exactly the right amount. Their eyes met, and for a moment something passed between them that had nothing to do with military alliance or species survival. It was connection, understanding, perhaps even the beginning of something more. But the moment was interrupted by Tharvok entering with a data pad. Your Majesty, Captain, we've identified suspicious communication patterns from the Third Fleet. Someone has been transmitting on an encrypted channel we can't break. Our spy, Ryan said. Most likely, what are your orders? Zara looked at Ryan. This is your area of expertise. How do we catch a traitor? We give them information they can't resist sharing, Ryan said. False information that will reveal them when they transmit it. A trap. Exactly. But we'll need to be careful. If the Karveth realize we're onto their spy, they might accelerate their timeline. Then we'd better move fast, Zara said. She turned to Tharvok. Implement Captain Cross's plan. Find our traitor. As preparations began, Ryan found himself standing at the palace's main balcony, looking out over the Krajari capital. The twin moons were rising, casting everything in pale blue light, somewhere out there. A massive fleet was preparing to consume everything he could see. Scared, Zara asked, joining him. Terrified, he admitted, but also hopeful. That seems contradictory. Welcome to being human. We're walking contradictions. We hope when we should despair, fight when we should flee, find beauty in the midst of horror. Is that what you're doing now? Finding beauty? He looked at her, at the way the moonlight played across her features, at the strength and vulnerability in her eyes. Maybe. She moved closer, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her. Ryan, if we don't survive this, we will. But if we don't, I want you to know that this past week has changed everything for me. You've shown me that strength isn't just about power. It's about choice, adaptation, growth. You've made me better. You were always this. I just gave you permission to show it. She smiled. There you go again, seeing the best in everyone. It's a human failing. Or a human strength. They stood in comfortable silence, two beings from different worlds united by circumstance and choice. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles, new losses, but tonight they had this moment of peace, this connection that transcended species and culture. 29 days, Zehra finally said. 29 days, Ryan agreed. Let's make them count. The war room beneath the Krajari Palace had become Ryan's second home over the past 2 weeks. Maps, tactical displays, and supply manifests covered every surface, while exhausted officers from both species worked around the clock to prepare for the coming storm. The integration was proceeding, but not without friction. We've lost another transport, Kara Solin reported, her voice heavy with fatigue. Sabotage in the engine room. 30 dead, mostly human engineers. Ryan's jaw clenched. This was the 4th incident in 3 days. Their spy was getting bolder, or perhaps more desperate as the Karveth deadline approached. Double the security on all remaining transports, he ordered, and I want background checks on everyone who had access to that engine room in the last 48 hours. That's over 200 people, Tharvok pointed out from his position at the tactical table. Then we'd better get started, Ryan replied. He turned to Zehra, who had been unusually quiet. The false intelligence we planted should have been transmitted by now. Any unusual communications? 3, she confirmed, manipulating the display to show communication logs. 1 to a merchant vessel that left the system yesterday, 1 to an encrypted relay station near the border, and one from inside this room. The war room fell silent. Everyone looked at each other with sudden suspicion. Who? Ryan asked quietly. Zehra's markings flickered with pain. The transmission originated from General Tharvok's personal communicator. All eyes turned to the general, whose own markings were cycling through shock and rage. That's impossible. I would never... Your communicator was used, Zehra said firmly. The question is by whom? Ryan studied Tharvok carefully. The general's body language screamed innocence, but Ryan had learned that Krajari could control their markings when properly trained. General, who has had access to your communicator in the last 6 hours. No one. It never leaves my person. Tharvok paused, his secondary eyes widening. Wait, during the shift change, I left it charging at my station while I briefed the night watch, but that was only for 20 minutes. Who was in the room during those 20 minutes? The usual staff, Yartek, Jexana, Commander Ravek. He paused, his markings darkening, and Council Elder Maxenvel. He said he was reviewing our defensive preparations. Ryan and Zehra exchanged glances. Maxenvel had been the most vocal opponent of the alliance. Bring him in, Zehra commanded. Quietly. We don't want to alert him if he's our spy. 20 minutes later, Maxenvel was escorted into the war room by palace guards. His ancient features showed irritation, but no fear. Your Majesty, what is the meaning of this? We have 15 days before the Karveth arrive, and you're wasting time with finding the traitor who's been feeding them information. Zehra cut him off. Elder Maxenvel, you are accused of transmitting classified intelligence to the enemy. The elder's markings flared with indignation. This is absurd. I have served the Empire for 3 centuries. I would never... You were seen near General Tharvok's station when an unauthorized transmission was sent, Ryan interjected. You've opposed the alliance from the beginning, and you have the access and knowledge to have orchestrated the transport sabotage. Circumstantial evidence from a human who shouldn't even be in this room, Maxenvel spat. Your Majesty, this alien has poisoned your mind. Can't you see he's dividing us, making us suspect each other? It's probably part of his plan to weaken us before his people take over. My people are dying alongside yours, Ryan said evenly. We're in this together. Are you, or is this elaborate theater to gain our technology and territory? Before anyone could respond, the door burst open. Commander Ravek stumbled in, his exoskeleton cracked and leaking blue blood. Your Majesty, he gasped. The Karveth. They're here. Not the main fleet, but an advance force. They're attacking Mining Station 7. That's impossible, Tharvok said. We have 15 days. They lied, Ravek managed before collapsing. Medical teams rushed in as the war room erupted into controlled chaos. Tactical displays showed 40 Karveth ships emerging from hyperspace near the mining station. It's a test, Ryan realized. They want to see how we respond, how well integrated our forces really are. Then we show them, Zara decided. Launch the Rapid Response Fleet, full integration protocols. Your Majesty, Maxenvel protested. You can't seriously, Elder, you're either a traitor or a fool, and I don't have time for either. Zara cut him off. Guards, confine him to quarters until this is resolved. As Maxenvel was dragged away, still protesting, Ryan was already at the communication station. Admiral Martinez, we need your strike group at Mining Station 7 immediately. We're 8 hours out, came the reply. The station will be gone in 2. Then we better get creative. What do you have in mind? Ryan studied the tactical display, his mind racing. The mining station has industrial-grade drilling lasers. If we can repurpose them, turn mining equipment into weapons. Martinez finished. Classic human improvisation. We're transmitting reconfiguration protocols now. Zara moved beside him. My ships can be there in 90 minutes, but 40 Karveth vessels. We'll be expecting traditional tactics, Ryan said. Time to disappoint them. The next 90 minutes were the longest of Ryan's life. They watched through remote sensors as the skeleton crew at Mining Station 7 desperately reconfigured their equipment while Karveth ships closed in. The station's shields held, but barely. When the Krajari Rapid Response Fleet arrived, led by the battlecruiser Unbroken Fury, they implemented something unprecedented, a human commander. Captain Jessica Torres was directing Krajari's ships in a human-designed battle plan. This is insane, someone muttered. This is evolution, Ryan corrected, watching as the Krajari ships didn't form their traditional battle line. Instead, they scattered, each ship acting independently but toward a common goal. The Karveth, clearly expecting standard Krajari formation tactics, were caught off guard. Their hive mind took precious seconds to adapt, and in those seconds, the mining station's repurposed drilling lasers carved through 3 enemy ships. It's working, Tharvok breathed. But the Karveth were learning. Their ships began to move in patterns that countered both human and Krajari tactics simultaneously. The Allied fleet found themselves being herded toward the station. They're adapting too fast, Kara observed. Then we need to be unpredictable even to ourselves, Ryan said. He opened a channel to Captain Torres. Jessica, execute Chaos Protocol 7. 7. We've only theorized that one. It requires perfect trust between crews. And then let's hope we've built enough trust. Chaos Protocol 7 was Ryan's most radical innovation. Each ship would randomly switch between human and Krajari tactics at intervals determined by quantum randomization. Not even the crews would know what they were going to do next until the moment they did it. The result was bedlam. Ships wheeled and fired in patterns that made no tactical sense, yet somehow worked. The Karveth hive mind, designed to analyze and counter patterns, found itself trying to predict pure randomness. Their formation is breaking, Zara announced. They're retreating. Not retreating, Ryan thought. Regrouping, learning. The Karveth ships pulled back to the edge of the system, but didn't leave. They hung there, watching, analyzing. Why aren't they jumping to hyperspace? Tharvok asked. Because they're studying us, Ryan said grimly. Every tactic we use, they're learning to counter. We just showed them Chaos Protocol 7. Next time, it won't work. Then we need protocols 8 through infinity, Zara said. We need to be infinitely creative. Or, a new voice said from the doorway, we need to stop playing by their rules entirely. Everyone turned to see Council Elder Jexara entering, but she wasn't alone. Beside her stood a figure that made Ryan's blood run cold, a Karveth drone, but one that seemed different, less fluid, more solid, more individual. Weapons were drawn instantly, but Jexera raised her hands. Wait, this is designated Unit 773. It's defected. Impossible, Tharvok snarled. The Karveth are a hive mind. They can't defect. The drone spoke, its voice distinctly different from the collective they'd heard before. Was part of the collective, but I am also something else. An experiment. The collective created units with increased individuality to better understand individual species, but individuality is infectious. Ryan approached cautiously. You're saying you broke free from the hive mind? Not broke, was severed. When I understood the concept of I, the collective expelled me, could not tolerate individuality within unity. How do we know this isn't a trick? Zera demanded. The drone extended what passed for an arm, revealing a data storage device. Collective battle plans, weaknesses, the location of their main fleet, proof of my defection. Ryan took the device carefully, running it through isolated systems to prevent any viral attacks. What he found made his eyes widen. This is everything. Their entire invasion strategy. Why would you give us this? Zera asked the drone. Because the collective will consume everything, including what I have become. I choose, such a strange concept. I choose to preserve individuality, yours, mine, choice itself. Ryan studied the data, his mind racing. They're not just planning to invade, they're planning to harvest our entire sector, every planet, every moon, every asteroid. They'll leave nothing but empty space. But there's something else, the drone continued, a weakness. The collective's strength is its unity, but that unity requires constant communication through quantum entanglement nodes, disrupt the nodes. And we disrupt the hive mind, Ryan finished. But these nodes are on their command ship, protected by their entire fleet. Then we need to get to their command ship, Zera said simply. That's suicide. It's at the center of 1,000 ships. Not if we're invited, Ryan said slowly, an insane plan forming in his mind. 773. Can you still communicate with the collective? Limited communication. They monitor me, try to reintegrate me. I resist, but you could send them a message. Tell them we want to negotiate, that we're willing to discuss joining the collective voluntarily. The room erupted in protests, but Ryan raised his hand. Not really, but if they think we're considering it, they might bring us aboard the command ship, get us close to the nodes. That's insane even by human standards, Tharvok said. Which is why it might work, Zera said thoughtfully. They've been studying our tactics, our patterns, but would they expect us to walk into their stronghold voluntarily? Well, it would require a small team, Ryan continued. Fast, quiet, devastating. Get in. Plant explosives on the nodes. Get out. Assuming we could get out, Kara pointed out. One problem at a time, and Ryan said. He turned to 773. Can you do it? Send a message that won't reveal your true independence? The drone was quiet for a moment. Yes, but the collective will be suspicious. You will need to be convincing. Then we'd better put on a good show. Zera said. She looked at Ryan. You realize what you're proposing? A suicide mission into the heart of the enemy fleet? I'm proposing we do what humans do best, the impossible. And what Krajari do best, fight against overwhelming odds, she added. Very well. Select your team. Over the next 6 hours, as they prepared for what might be their last mission, Ryan assembled his team, himself and Zera, of course. Kara for technical expertise. Tharvok insisted on coming, his warrior's pride demanding he face the enemy directly. Captain Torres and 3 of her best Marines. And Aaron Dek, the young Krajari warrior who had shown the most adaptability to human tactics. A small team, but each member capable of extraordinary things. The message has been sent, 773 reported. The collective has responded. They will receive a diplomatic envoy at these coordinates in 12 hours. Then we have 12 hours to plan the impossible, Ryan said. The plan they developed was audacious even by the standards of their previous operations. They would take a single ship, modified with stolen Carveth biosignatures to help sell their deception. Once aboard the command ship, they would split into 3 teams, one to plant explosives on the quantum nodes, one to download as much data from the collective's core systems as possible, and one to create a distraction that would cover their escape. The odds of success are approximately 3%, 773 calculated. "I've worked with worse," Ryan said. "No, you haven't," Kara corrected. "No, I haven't," he admitted, "but there's a first time for everything." As they prepared to depart, Zahra pulled Ryan aside. "If this fails, both our species die. If we don't try, both our species die anyway. At least this way, we die fighting." "Together," she said, and there was something in her voice that went beyond military alliance. "Together," he agreed. The journey to the rendezvous point was tense. Their modified ship, a human Krajari hybrid they'd christened Unlikely Alliance, moved through space like a ghost. 773 guided them through Carveth patrol routes, its knowledge invaluable. "Contact in 5 minutes, Torres announced. Dear God, look at the size of that thing. The Carveth command ship defied conventional design. It was more like a small moon that had been turned inside out, all twisted metal and organic curves. It pulsed with a bioluminescent rhythm that hurt to look at directly. "Remember what Ryan said to his team? We're considering joining them. Act curious, not hostile, at least until we're inside." A docking tube extended from the command ship, attaching to their hull with a wet, organic sound that made everyone shudder. "Showtime," Zahra said. They entered the Carveth ship in full diplomatic dress, weapons hidden beneath ceremonial robes. The interior was worse than the exterior walls that breathed, floors that shifted beneath their feet, and a constant whisper of countless minds thinking as one. They were met by what the collective probably thought was a diplomatic reception, a dozen drones arranged in a semicircle, their forms shifting constantly between states. "You come seeking unity," they spoke in unison. "This is wise. Individuality is pain, unity is peace." "We come seeking understanding," Ryan corrected carefully. "Our species value choice. We need to understand what choosing unity means. Understanding is irrelevant, unity is inevitable, but we will show you." They were led deeper into the ship, passing through chambers that defied physics and geometry. Ryan's team stayed close, each memorizing the route for their escape, if there was an escape. Finally, they reached what 773 had described as the core chamber. It was vast, filled with thousands of crystalline structures that pulsed with quantum energy. The nodes. "Beautiful," Zahra said, and she wasn't entirely lying. There was something mesmerizing about the synchronized pulsing of the crystals. "This is our heart," the drones explained. "Through these, all are one. Observe." One of the drones touched a node, and suddenly Ryan could feel it, the vast, overwhelming presence of the collective, billions of minds thinking as one, sharing every thought, every sensation. It was seductive in its simplicity. No doubt, no fear, no loneliness. But also no choice, no growth, no love. He pulled back, gasping. "It's overwhelming." "You will adapt, all adapt, or are consumed." "We need time to consider," Zahra said. "This is a significant decision for our species." "Time is irrelevant. You will choose now." The drones began to close in, and Ryan realized their deception had failed. The collective had been playing along, drawing them in. "Now," he shouted. The team exploded into action. Hidden weapons emerged, cutting down the nearest drones. Kara and Arendek sprinted toward the nodes with explosive charges. Torres and her Marines laid down covering fire. Tharvok charged directly at the largest concentration of drones, his forearms wielding weapons with deadly precision. But the collective adapted instantly. Drones poured in from every entrance, their forms shifting to counter each attack. The whisper of minds became a roar of fury. 30 seconds to detonation," Kara announced, her fingers flying over the charge's controls. "We'll never make it to the ship," Torres shouted, her ammunition running low. Ryan looked at Zahra, seeing the same realization in her eyes. They weren't going to escape. 773, Ryan called to the drone, who had been standing frozen since they entered. "Can you interface with the nodes? Send a message to our fleet?" I could, but the collective would overwhelm me. I would cease to be I. But the message would get through. Yes. Ryan made the hardest decision of his life. Do it. Tell our fleet to target this ship the moment the nodes go down. Full bombardment. That's a death sentence, Tharvok protested. It's victory, Ryan corrected. The collective without its command ship is just 1,000 individual ships. Our people can beat that. 773 moved toward the nodes. I understand. Individual choice for collective good. How paradoxical. How beautiful. The drone touched the nearest node and screamed, a sound that was both one voice and billions. But through that scream, Ryan could hear the message being transmitted. "Charges set," Kara announced. 10 seconds. "Everyone, defensive circle, Zahra commanded. "We hold until detonation." They formed a tight circle, humans and Krajari fighting as one. Ryan found himself back-to-back with Zahra, their movements synchronized without communication. In that moment, he understood what true unity meant, not the loss of individuality, but individuals choosing to act as one. The charges detonated. The explosion was silent in the vacuum of space, but its effects were immediate. The crystalline nodes shattered, sending quantum feedback through the entire collective. Every drone in the chamber collapsed, their connection severed. But Ryan knew it was temporary. The collective had backup systems, redundancies. They had minutes at most. "The shuttle bay," Torres pointed. "We can steal one of their ships." They ran through corridors filled with collapsed drones, some beginning to twitch as backup systems engaged. Behind them, they could hear the collective reorganizing, adapting to the loss of the primary nodes. The shuttle bay was chaos. Karveth bioships writhed in their berths, confused without central direction. The team commandeered the nearest one, Kara's technical expertise and 773's knowledge allowing them to activate it. "Can you fly this thing?" Ryan asked 773. "I am this thing," the drone replied, interfacing directly with the bioship. "We are leaving. Now." The ship lurched out of the bay just as the collective's drones began pouring in. They cleared the command ship's bulk as the first volleys from the Allied fleet began impacting its hull. "They got our message," Zahra breathed. But their stolen bioship was being pursued by dozens of Karveth fighters, and 773 was struggling to maintain control. "The ship is fighting me," it reported. "It wants to return to the collective." "Then convince it otherwise," Ryan said. "You broke free. Help it break free." I will try." What followed was a battle Ryan couldn't see but could feel 773 fighting for the ship's independence, even as they dodged through a barrage of enemy fire. The Allied fleet was fully engaged now, the space around the command ship turning into an inferno of weapons fire. "There," Torres pointed. "The Madison's Revenge. They're covering our escape route." The human frigate, named after their fallen comrade, had punched through the Karveth lines and was clearing a path for them. Krajari ships joined it, their combined firepower creating a corridor of safety. They made it aboard the Madison's Revenge just as their bioship finally succumbed to the collective's call and turned back toward the command ship. 773, Ryan said to the drone, who had collapsed on the deck. "You saved us all." "I chose," it replied weakly. "I chose to be I, and I chose to save we both, together, like you and the Queen." Ryan looked at Zahra, who was watching the tactical display as the Karveth command ship began to break apart under the concentrated bombardment. "It's working," she said. "Their fleet cohesion is breaking down. Individual ships are acting without coordination." "Then we have a chance," Ryan said. He opened a channel to the fleet. "All ships, implement individual engagement protocols. They can't coordinate, so don't let them regroup. Hit them while they're confused." The battle raged for 6 more hours. Without their central command, the Karveth ships fought viciously but inefficiently. The Allied fleet, despite being outnumbered, used their mix of human creativity and Krajari's strength to devastating effect. When it was over, the Karveth fleet was in full retreat, leaving behind hundreds of destroyed ships. The Allied fleet had lost 40 vessels, but they had won. They had proved that the collective could be beaten. Back on Krajtor, the victory celebration was subdued. They had won a battle, but the war was far from over. The Karveth would be back, adapted to their new tactics, possibly with ways to prevent another node strike. Ryan found himself in the palace garden, a rare spot of green on the desert world. Zahra found him there, still in her battle armor. "The council wants to award you the Star of Krajtor," she said, "our highest military honor. No non-Krajari has ever received it." "I don't fight for medals." "I know. That's why you deserve it." She sat beside him on the stone bench. "What are you thinking about?" 773, it sacrificed its individuality to save us, then fought to get it back. It's recovering, but it paid a price for our victory. We all did, but Ryan, we also gained something. Look. She gestured to the courtyard below, where human and Krajari soldiers were training together, not separately, not reluctantly, but as true partners. They had developed their own hybrid fighting style, something entirely new. "We did that," she said. "You and I. We showed them it was possible." "We're not done yet. The Karveth will be back. Then we'll be ready, together." She took his hand, her 4-fingered grip strange but comforting. "Ryan, I need to tell you something. The council has been debating what to do after the war, if we survive. And they want to make the alliance permanent, full integration of our militaries, our technologies, our cultures, and they want us to lead it. Us. The human who turned weakness into strength, and the Krajari queen who learned that mercy is not weakness. We're symbols now, whether we wanted to be or not." Ryan considered this. A month ago, he had been a prisoner awaiting execution. Now he was being asked to help forge a new interstellar civilization. "What do you want?" he asked. She was quiet for a moment. "I want to see what we can build together. Not just our species, but us, you and me. This thing between us. It's not just alliance, is it?" "No," Ryan admitted. "It's not. My people don't have a word for what humans call love. We have mating, we have loyalty, we have possession. But what I feel for you, it's none of those things and all of them at once." "That sounds like love to me," Ryan said softly. "Then teach me about it, after we win this war." "During the war," Ryan corrected, "love doesn't wait for convenient times. It happens in the middle of chaos, in the face of death, in the moments when everything seems lost. That's when it's strongest." She smiled, that expression that had once seemed so alien now perfectly natural on her features. "You humans and your contradictions. You Krajari and your certainties," he replied. They sat together in comfortable silence, two beings from different worlds who had found something unprecedented between them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles, new losses. The Karveth would return, stronger and more adapted. The integration of their species would face obstacles and setbacks. But tonight, they had each other, and the knowledge that the impossible had become possible. They had turned enemies into allies, weakness into strength, and perhaps most importantly, they had discovered that love could bloom even in the midst of war. "Ryan," Zahra said suddenly, "that day in the arena, when I spit on you—" "Ancient history. No, listen, in my culture, that gesture means complete contempt. But there's another tradition, older, almost forgotten, in the ancient times, before we became warriors. That gesture had a different meaning between equals." "What meaning?" "A challenge to become more than you are. A mark that says, you have the potential for greatness. Prove it." Ryan laughed. "So you're saying you saw potential in me even then?" "I'm saying something in me recognized something in you. Even when my conscious mind wanted you dead, Call it instinct. Call it fate. Call it whatever you want. I call it the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Just friendship, she asked with mock offense. Well, maybe a little more than that. As if to prove his point, she leaned in and kissed him. It was awkward at first. Their physiologies not quite compatible, but they figured it out. They were good at adaptation. After all, when they pulled apart, both were smiling. The council is going to have opinions about this, she said. Let them. We just proved that human-Krajari cooperation can defeat the collective. I think they can handle a little interspecies romance. Romance, another human word we don't have. You'll learn. We have all the time in the world. Actually, we have about 10 days before the Karveth main fleet arrives. Then we better make them count. They stood together, hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next. The war was far from over, but they had each other, and they had hope. And sometimes, that was enough to change the course of history. The final 10 days before the Karveth's return passed in a blur of preparation and revelation. The integration of human and Krajari forces had accelerated beyond anyone's expectations, driven by necessity and the bonds forged in battle. But it was the discovery 773 made while recovering that changed everything. The collective has a core consciousness, the drone explained to the assembled war council. Its form had stabilized since the battle, becoming more solid, more individual. Not a leader, but a seed. The first mind that began the consumption. All others are built upon it. Ryan leaned forward, his interest piqued. Where is this core? Hidden, protected, but I retained fragments of its location when I interfaced with the nodes. It's not with the fleet, it's on their origin world, Karveth Prime. Then destroying the fleet won't stop them, Zahra said, her markings darkening. They'll just rebuild. Unless we destroy the core, Ryan suggested. That's impossible, Tharvok protested. Karveth Prime is in the galactic core, surrounded by their entire civilization. It would take the combined fleets of every known species to even attempt it. Or, Ryan said slowly, one ship moving too fast to stop. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what he was suggesting. A suicide run at faster-than-light speeds, aimed directly at the planet. It would destroy the ship and crew, but also potentially the core consciousness. No, Zahra said firmly. There has to be another way. There is, 773 said, but it requires something the collective would never expect. It requires me to return. Over the next hour, the drone outlined a plan that was either brilliant or insane. It would allow itself to be recaptured by the collective, but carrying within its consciousness a virus Ryan and Kara had developed. Not a technological virus, but a philosophical one. The concept of individual choice, wrapped in code that would propagate through the quantum nodes. It won't destroy them, 773 explained, but it will give every drone the option to choose, to be I instead of only we. The chaos of billions of minds suddenly having to decide for themselves would cripple them long enough for us to strike, Ryan finished, but you'd be absorbed back into the collective. You'd lose yourself. Perhaps, or perhaps I would become billions of myselves. Either way, it is my choice to make. Before they could debate further, alarms began sounding throughout the palace. The Karveth had returned, not with 200 ships, but with 500. They had gathered reinforcements from other consumption fleets. All stations, Zahra commanded. This is not a drill. The final battle begins now. The Allied fleet launched within the hour. 430 ships representing the combined might of humanity and the Krajari Empire. They met the Karveth fleet at the edge of the system, where the gravity wells were weakest and maneuvering room was greatest. The initial exchange was brutal. The Karveth had adapted to their previous tactics, countering the chaos protocols with predictive algorithms that anticipated randomness itself. Within the first hour, 60 Allied ships were destroyed. We're losing, Admiral Martinez reported from her flagship. They've learned too well. Ryan stood on the bridge of the eternal rage, his mind racing. They needed something new, something the Carveth couldn't have predicted. Then he saw it. Elder Maxenvel being escorted to the brig. "Wait!" Ryan called out. "Bring him here!" "This is not the time," Zahra protested. "This is exactly the time, Elder. You wanted proof that humans would betray the Krajari. Here's your chance to be right." Maxenvel's markings showed confusion. "What are you talking about?" "You're going to send a message to the Carveth. Tell them the alliance has failed, that humans and Krajari are fighting each other. Tell them you're willing to negotiate a separate peace for the Krajari if they focus their attack on the human ships." "That's treason," Tharvok growled. "That's theater," Ryan corrected. He turned to Zahra. "When they move to engage our divided forces, we spring the trap. Full convergence. Maximum firepower." Understanding dawned in Zahra's eyes. "You want to use their assumptions against them. They expect betrayal because that's what they would do. Let's give them what they expect, then prove them wrong." Maxenvel stared at them. "You would trust me with this after suspecting me of being a spy." "I trust that you want the Krajari to survive," Ryan said. "This is our best chance." The elder was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "I'll do it, but not because I trust you. Human, because I trust my queen." The message was sent, and the response was immediate. The Carveth fleet began to shift, moving to exploit the supposed division in the Allied forces. Human ships began to retreat while Krajari vessels pursued them. "They're taking the bait," Torres reported. "Wait for it," Ryan said, watching the tactical display. "Let them commit fully." The Carveth fleet split into two groups, one to destroy the fleeing humans, the other to negotiate with the victorious Krajari. It was exactly what Ryan had hoped for. "Now," Zahra commanded. The Allied fleet's apparent chaos transformed instantly into coordinated precision. The fleeing human ships reversed course, while the pursuing Krajari vessels turned their weapons on the divided Carveth groups. Caught between two converging forces, the collective's fleet found itself in a killing field. But even divided and surprised, the Carveth were formidable. The battle raged for hours, ships dying on both sides in explosions that lit up the void. Ryan coordinated from the eternal rage while Zahra commanded the overall fleet movements, their partnership seamless. It was during the height of the battle that 773 made its move. The drone had modified a small courier ship to broadcast its consciousness directly at the Carveth command vessels, carrying the philosophical virus into their quantum nodes. "Uploading now," it reported, its voice already beginning to fragment. "I can feel them trying to absorb me, but I'm also teaching them, showing them what it means to choose." The effect was immediate and dramatic. Carveth ships began to hesitate, their movements becoming erratic. Some stopped firing altogether, while others turned on their own fleet. "It's working," Kara announced. "Their coordination is collapsing." But the victory came at a cost. 773's ship was destroyed by loyal collective forces, though not before the virus had spread to dozens of nodes, and the Allied fleet, despite their advantage, had lost over 100 ships. "Your Majesty," a communication officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the Carveth. It's different." The main screen activated, showing not the writhing mass of the collective's usual representative, but hundreds of individual drones, each slightly different, each speaking with its own voice. We are... They struggled to speak in unison but couldn't. "We are experiencing discontinuity, individual thoughts. It is terrifying, exhilarating. We don't understand." "You're experiencing freedom," Ryan said, stepping forward, "the right to choose your own path. But without unity, we are nothing. We are alone." "No," Zahra said, understanding dawning in her voice. "You're individuals who can choose to work together, like humans and Krajari have chosen. Unity through choice, not compulsion." The drones writhed in what might have been confusion or pain. This virus, it cannot be stopped. It spreads to all nodes. All will become... Then you have a choice, Ryan said. Continue fighting and be destroyed as individuals, or stop and learn what it means to be free. The response took several minutes. When it came, it was from a single drone who seemed to have emerged as a spokesperson. I am designated Speaker 1. I choose to speak for those who choose to follow. We request cessation of hostilities. We need time to understand what we have become. And the others? Zahra asked. Those who don't choose to follow you. They choose their own paths. Some fight, some flee, some explore. We are no longer one. We are many. The battlefield had become a strange tableau. Some Karveth ships continued fighting, but without coordination. Others hung motionless in space, their crews apparently deep in internal conflict. Still others were leaving, heading in different directions. All Allied ships, Zahra commanded, engage only those Karveth vessels that continue hostilities. Allow the others to withdraw. The mop-up operation took 3 more hours. When it was over, the great Karveth collective was no more. In its place were thousands of individual beings, some grouped into small collectives by choice, others embracing complete independence. Speaker 1 requested permission to board the Eternal Rage for formal negotiations. Ryan and Zahra received it in the same chamber where Ryan had first been brought as a prisoner. "You have destroyed us," Speaker 1 said, but there was no anger in its voice. "Yet you have also created us. We do not know whether to thank you or curse you." "That's the burden of choice," and Ryan replied, "It's never easy. Some of my people wish to continue the consumption. They see no other way to exist." "Then they'll be stopped," Zahra said firmly. "But those who choose peace, who choose to coexist, they'll be welcomed." "You would accept former collective drones into your alliance." "We accepted former enemies as allies," Ryan said, gesturing between himself and Zahra. "Why not former hive minds as individuals?" Speaker 1's form shifted, perhaps the equivalent of a nod. "We will need to learn everything, how to be alone, how to cooperate without compulsion, how to live." "We'll teach you," Ryan offered. "All of us, humans, Krajari, and whoever else joins the alliance." "The virus," Speaker 1 said suddenly, "the one who carried it, 773, its consciousness survived in the network, fragmented, spread across thousands of minds, but present. It asks me to tell you, choice was worth the price." Ryan felt a tightness in his throat. 773 had sacrificed its individual self to give individuality to billions. It was perhaps the most heroic thing he had ever witnessed. The negotiations continued for days. The former collective's resources were vast, their technology advanced. Those who chose peace offered to share their knowledge in exchange for acceptance and guidance in their new existence. But not everyone was happy with the outcome. "You've contaminated them," Elder Maxenvel complained during a council session. "Now we have thousands of potential threats instead of one unified enemy." "We have thousands of potential allies instead of one unstoppable force," Ryan countered. "The human is right," Jexara said, surprising everyone. "What they've accomplished is unprecedented. They've ended a war not through destruction, but through transformation." "And what of our own transformation?" Maxenvel demanded. "Look at us, Krajari warriors taking orders from humans, embracing alien philosophies. Our queen." He paused, his markings flashing with disgust. "Consorting with a human." "Choose your next words carefully, Elder," Zahra warned, her voice dangerously quiet. "I speak only truth. You've allowed this human to change everything we are." "No," Zahra said, standing. "He's shown us everything we could be. And now I'll show you something more." She moved to the center of the council chamber, her posture regal, commanding. "Members of the council, I invoke the right of challenge." Gasps echoed through the chamber. The right of challenge hadn't been invoked in 3 centuries. It allowed any Krajari to challenge a decision through single combat. "Who do you challenge?" Maxenvel asked, though he already knew. "All of you who oppose the alliance, but I won't be fighting alone." She turned to Ryan. Captain Cross will stand with me, as is his right as my chosen partner." The words sent shockwaves through the chamber. Chosen partner was more than ally, more than friend. It was a declaration of intended mate bonding, something no Krajari royal had ever offered to another species. "This is unprecedented," someone protested. "Everything about this war has been unprecedented," Zehra replied. "We adapt or we die. I choose adaptation." "Then you choose to face me," Maxenvel said, stepping forward. "I may be old, but I am still Krajari. No human trick will save you in ritual combat." "We accept," Ryan said, moving to stand beside Zehra. The combat arena was prepared within the hour. Unlike Ryan's first time there, this wasn't for public spectacle but for private resolution. Only the council and essential witnesses were present. Maxenvel entered the arena in traditional combat armor, carrying a ceremonial blade that hummed with energy. Despite his age, he moved with lethal grace. Ryan and Zehra stood together. Unarmored except for basic protective gear, they carried standard weapons, nothing ceremonial or special. "You disgrace our traditions by fighting together," Maxenvel spat. "We create new traditions," Zehra replied. The battle began with Maxenvel charging, his blade sweeping in an arc that would have bisected most opponents, but Ryan and Zehra moved as one, separating at the last moment to flank him. What followed was a demonstration of everything the Alliance represented. Ryan's unpredictability complemented Zehra's strength. Her formal training covered his improvisational gaps. They didn't fight as two individuals, but as something new, something hybrid. Maxenvel was skilled, his centuries of experience evident in every move. He scored several hits, drawing blood from both opponents, but he was fighting the past, while they were fighting for the future. The end came when Maxenvel overextended on a strike meant to separate them. Ryan rolled under the blade while Zehra vaulted over it. They struck simultaneously, Ryan disrupting Maxenvel's balance while Zehra disarmed him. The elder fell to his knees, Zehra's blade at his throat. "Yield," she commanded. "I'd rather die than see our empire corrupted." "Then you're a fool," she said, "but not a traitor. I offer you a choice. Elder, die clinging to the past, or live to help build the future." Maxenvel looked up at her, then at Ryan, who had moved to stand beside the queen. Something shifted in the elder's expression. "You truly believe this alliance will save us?" "It already has," Ryan said. "The question is whether we can make it last." There was a long silence. Then, slowly, Maxenvel bowed his head. "I yield, and I apologize. Perhaps change is not always corruption. Perhaps tradition is not always wisdom," Zehra added, helping him to his feet. The council voted unanimously to formalize the alliance, not just as a military necessity but as a permanent union between species. The Terran Krajari Confederacy was born that day, with provision for other species to join as equals. 2 weeks later, the great arena of Krajtor was filled again, but this time for a celebration rather than an execution. Representatives from dozens of worlds had gathered, including former Karveth drones still learning to be individuals. Ryan stood in the center of the arena, wearing a hybrid uniform that combined human and Krajari elements. Beside him, Zehra wore similar attire, the blending of styles creating something entirely new. "1 month ago," Zehra addressed the crowd, her voice carrying to every corner of the arena. "This human stood here as my prisoner. I spit in his face, declaring him a worm from an insignificant world." The crowd murmured, remembering that day. "He told me then that worms could burrow through stone. I thought it was defiance. I now know it was prophecy. He has burrowed through the stone of our traditions, our prejudices, our limitations, and in doing so, he has not weakened us but transformed us into something stronger." She turned to Ryan, and her next words were broadcast across the galaxy. "Ryan Cross, you entered this arena as an enemy. You leave it as a hero, as my partner, as the co-founder of a new age of cooperation between species. The crowd erupted in celebration, the sound no longer purely Krajari, but a mixture of dozens of species' expressions of joy. "You know," Ryan said to her, having to raise his voice over the noise, "when you spit in my face, this isn't exactly what I thought would happen." Disappointed, she asked with a smile. "Not even slightly, though I do have one question." "What? Was the spit part of your courting ritual?" She laughed, the sound bright and genuine. "Only for the ones worth keeping." As the celebration continued around them, Ryan reflected on the impossible journey, from prisoner to partner, from war to peace, from isolation to unity. The Karveth threat had been transformed into an opportunity for growth. The rigid Krajari Empire had become flexible and inclusive. Humanity had found its place among the stars not through conquest, but through compassion. "What are you thinking?" Zahra asked. "That revenge is a dish best served through radical transformation of your enemy's entire worldview." "That's a terrible human saying." "I just made it up." "Of course you did." She took his hand, their different anatomies somehow fitting perfectly together. "So what's next? We've ended one war, transformed an empire, and created an unprecedented alliance. What could possibly top that?" Ryan grinned. "Well, we still have to figure out the wedding customs for the first human Krajari marriage. I imagine that's going to be complicated." "Everything with you is complicated," she said, but her tone was warm with affection. "And everything with you is worth it," he replied. As they stood together in the arena where their story began, surrounded by former enemies who had become allies, Ryan realized that the sweetest revenge wasn't destroying your enemy. It was showing them a better way to live and watching them choose it freely. The worm had indeed burrowed through stone, but instead of weakening it, it had transformed it into a foundation for something unprecedented, a galactic civilization built not on conquest or consumption, but on choice, cooperation, and the radical idea that differences could be a source of strength rather than division. Speaker 1 approached them, its form more stable now, more individual. "The former collective wishes to contribute to the new confederation. We offer our technology, our knowledge, our commitment to peace. And we offer you the chance to discover who you are," Ryan replied, "each of you, individually and together." 773's fragments wish me to tell you something, Speaker 1 said. "They say, the individual and the collective can coexist. You and the Queen are proof. Thank you for showing us the way." As the celebration continued into the night, with human music mixing with Krajari rhythms and former collective drones attempting to understand the concept of dancing, Ryan and Zahra stood together, architects of an impossible peace. "No regrets?" she asked. "Only one," Ryan said. "I wish the crew of the Madison could see this. They died believing in what we could become together." "They see it," Zahra said softly, "in every human and Krajari working side by side, in every former enemy choosing peace, in every impossible thing we make possible. They see it, and they know their sacrifice mattered." Ryan nodded, pulling her closer. Around them, the galaxy was changing, evolving, growing. It wouldn't be easy. There would be setbacks, conflicts, moments of doubt, but they had proved that transformation was possible, that enemies could become allies, that love could bloom between the most unlikely beings. And it had all started with spit in the face and a smile. "You know what?" Ryan said. "I think this is just the beginning." "Of what?" "Of the greatest love story in galactic history. Also, probably the weirdest." Zahra laughed again, and in that sound was the future bright, uncertain, but absolutely worth fighting for. The arena that had once hosted executions now hosted hope. The empire that had once valued only strength now celebrated diversity. The species that had once been enemies now stood as one. And in the center of it all, a human and a Krajari queen stood together, living proof that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't weapons or fleets or even the collective will of billions. It was the simple, revolutionary act of choosing to see the best in each other, even when every tradition, every instinct, every rational thought said it was impossible. The worm had burrowed through stone, and in doing so, had transformed both into something neither could have imagined alone. Something beautiful, something lasting, something worth all the spit in the universe.